Good evening, folks. Welcome back to another Monday night live stream. How is everybody? Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Looks like we've got some regulars in the chat already there. We'll say hello to a few people. So Lord Maiden was in nice and early there. Good evening to you. Ortega says, how many likes can we get for the thumbnail before the video goes live? I'm not sure how many we got, mate, but yeah, even one's nice, mate. Thank you very much. Mark Wright says, good evening to everybody. Good evening, Mark Wright. Peter Nicholas, he was in nice and early as well, saying, whatever can this one be about? And I bet Andy will turn up in fancy dress. No fancy dress for me, mate. You know me better than that. Tonight's topic is about randomness and what randomness in gaming, why you shouldn't be worried about it, and actually why sometimes more of it is a good thing. And we'll come on to that stuff in a bit. Crabby Vision, evening all, says, hope you're all well. Good evening, mate. How are you? Hope you're well. Dirk's in as well, saying, still half an hour to go. We're ready now, mate. We're going. Phil Wilkinson, I'm sure I saw you were first earlier on today with the first comment. So yes, nice to see you in, mate. Christian, good evening, sir. Thank you very much, as always, for coming in and modding the stream. We've got Steve Evans in as well. Yep, hiya, Steve. How are you doing? Got Andrew Fairbanks. Hello, mate. Good afternoon. He says, how about them Cowboys? I tell you what, mate, it was a bit of a squeaky bum win, to be fair. I didn't see a no-score fourth quarter coming on that one. But yeah, first game in the new stadium, we managed to kind of get the points home, get a W on the board. Tony saying, is it wrong to hit like before the stream starts? It's never wrong to hit like, mate. Good evening to you. Yoakum, good morning, good day, good evening, folks. He's on his feet and ready to paint a little. I hope you're well too, mate, and I hope the recovery from the operations is going really well. It's good that you're kind of on your feet and bit painting. That sounds all positive. Good evening to Deb's with Hobby Studio as well. Hello, Deb. How are you? Red Rose Wargaming's an evening all. Painting 2 Caradron gunboats tonight, but got to be for early doors, so can't stay too long. Well, thank you very much for popping in. We've also got Iron in as well. Hello to you. Simon Parfit says, got to love a bit of randomness in games, although they provide some frustration. Ultimately, it makes for a better game and provides for some good laughs. We'll come on to randomness in a little bit, and hopefully I've got something like kind of interesting to say about it, and it's not just a case of, yeah, too much randomness is bad. Blizzards, hellos to you too, mate. Nice to see you. Stu McTurdy, where did that just go there? McMurtry, why do I say McTurdy? I always glance at it, I think, and I see too many T's. Stuart McMurtry, good evening, mate. How are you? Jason says, I love randomness in games. Covers up how terrible a strategist I am. Yeah, that makes two of us, mate, I think. Christopher Warden, in like Flynn. Hello to you, mate. Derek Hodge, good evening. Palmsy saying, what's up, randoms? We're all randoms, mate. John Estel says, good evening, all. He's painting tonight, which is great. I saw in the Patreon chat, mate, you said you'd finally finished the chair, so you had somewhere to sit. Well done, mate. Marcus is in as well, saying this is Super Pumpkin Man. He's using his real name. We're getting the real you now, Marcus. You feel good enough to tell us your real name now. Nice to see you, mate. Hello to Frantic as well. Hello to Steve Evans, other Steve Evans. Hello to Chris Dawes as well. He says, is there a bit of clipping in the mic volume? Do you know what it is, mate? I've been fannying on with the mic tonight, trying to sort it out and stuff. It's as good as it's going to get, mate. So I apologise if it's. I apologise if it's not perfect. I'll have to look into it because it's been fine up until the last couple of streams. Jim saying, howdy all. How are you doing, Jim? Having a look at a few other names there. Steve's just back from his local club after another cracking game of Combat Patrol 40k. Glad you're enjoying it, mate. Derek Hodges is a fan of games from the Two Fat Lollies. I'm used to randomness. Blizzards is saying orange rhymes with no other word. Random fact. That is true, mate. That is true. Krabby saying randomly not painting. He's been making progress this afternoon, though. Oh, that's a big smile, as if it's like kind of like, is it like secret squirrel stuff, mate? Or is it more of your Marines? Jason was saying, how about them Rams last night? I'm pretty happy, mate. They did all right. Definitely looks like our defense is looking a bit better this season. Phil saying, how's the healthy living going, mate? It's going really well, mate. I'm still 2 weeks now into September. No booze, no junk food, no takeaways. I'm walking like an average of about 5 miles a day. I'm still kind of cutting calories. I'm losing weight. All good, mate. And it's actually kind of like from a mental state of mind as well. I'm feeling really motivated at the moment, so I'm sure it's not a coincidence. VJ is in as well. Good morning, VJ. How are you, mate? Coxie's in as well, saying struggling to summon the energy to paint tonight, but looking forward to the stream. Well, I'll get cracking on, mate, with that one very soon. Bobby Clark, good evening, mate. Enjoy a nice week off. Lee Russin made it after all. Hello, mate. How are you doing? VG's doing a bit of Nurgle Blitzball building. Red Rose Wargaming says orange lozenge. I don't think lozenge rhymes with orange. Similar though, isn't it? And Peter Stockdale just sneaking in there as well before I start the main chat. So tonight, yes, we're talking about randomness, and as always, I will flick across to the nice clean screen so I can record this for our Tuesday night clips one. So that anybody that kind of, you know, normally if you don't get a chance to see the Monday night stream, maybe you don't think it's the same kind of experience to watch a full 2-hour stream back when you're not interacting with it. This is a perfect way to kind of catch up on the crux of what I'm talking about on that particular stream. And tonight, it's about randomness in gaming. So again, as always, I've got my notes here. So yeah, I'll start that one now. Hello as well. Marcus is saying, I am fine with randomness. Random orcs are the best orcs. You get them on the board, you have no idea what's going to happen. And Luke's just put in there as well saying, what's up? Yes. So tonight we're talking about randomness in gaming. And randomness has really existed in pretty much every game in one form or another, even probably in chess. From an example of, yes, there are kind of set out plays and moves that you will do, but you adjust your tactics based upon what your opponent does. So it's almost random in what is your opponent going to do. So even the games that you don't think are random have some even minor elements of randomness. Most people think there's kind of good randomness and bad randomness. Bad randomness meaning like it's quite infuriating because you not only don't know that that random element is going to happen, there's nothing you can really do about it either. It's like if a game is completely random, you might as well just flip a coin, because at the end of the game, it's pure luck of the draw who wins. It won't be through your skill. It won't be through your strategy. If there's too much randomness, that's kind of bad randomness. When it comes to good randomness, it has some degree of kind of player interaction, and it basically gives you the ability to manipulate the randomness, or at least meaningfully respond to the outcome of that randomness, if you like. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight, I'm going to be referencing people like Jeff Engelstein. Anybody that's into board games will know who Jeff Engelstein is. And also a guy called Adam Millard, who did a topic not too dissimilar from this. And I just found the stuff he was talking about was really interesting. So I'll put links in the description down to those. Now, there are really probably 4 kinds of randomness. There's what's called input randomness, and happens even before you start playing. This is something that it randomizes the game from the start before you've even rolled a dice, if you like. There's output randomness, and this is what happens because you did something in the game. So I want to shoot you, I'm now going to roll a dice. That is output randomness. There is an output of randomness from your decision. You also get reactive randomness, and that is something that basically happens in the game and you can react to that. And then there's also controllable randomness, and this is something that you can do to minimize randomness, or maybe to mitigate the effect of that. And I am going to say randomness a lot tonight, so I apologize in advance. So we start talking about random input. Now this is kind of randomized. This is like randomizing the game before players even began. Think of something like Warcry, where you draw a deployment card, you draw a scenario card, you draw the terrain layout, if you like, a terrain layout card, and you also draw a twist card. This is input randomness, and it creates some really strange and weird combinations, if you like. And the easiest way to control this kind of randomness in a game is by randomizing within limits. So setting some kind of limits that allows, it's still random, but it's almost within boundaries, if you like. So think about Star Wars Legion. If anybody's familiar with Star Wars Legion, the way you set up your games in Star Wars Legion is this kind of like a pick and a ban list. If anybody's familiar with like kind of with competitive League of Legends, similar kind of thing where you basically, I think there's 3 of each different card. I forget exactly what they are, but there's deployment, there's a scenario, and something else. And taking turns, you get to kind of pick one, ban one, and that is a way of controlling that random input. Or you could also limit it to the number of scenarios you can choose before the game sets up. So if there's only 6 scenarios and you roll a d6 to choose which one, that randomness is limited, or it's kind of within limits, because there are only 6 to choose from. For example, because Warcry has those decks of cards, I'm sure I read somewhere there's about 14 million different combinations of selecting, because you're choosing 4 cards, and I think there's something like 36 cards in a deck. The number of options you can get from that is like 14 million. Now, that is a lot of randomness. So, yeah, one way to kind of control that would be to drop down the number of cards in a deck. If you only start playing with the ones that are sort of marked with the match play symbol, that sort of puts boundaries around the amount of randomness that's in that. Now, input randomness is actually very good as well for competitive gaming, because this allows people to kind of test player skill and strategy as they need to learn to adapt to the game that is laid out in front of them. If you went to a tournament and every time you went, you always knew the terrain was going to be in the same place, you always knew the board deployments were going to be the same, you always knew what you were going to face, that lack of randomness would mean that you would tailor your list to just work one way. And there is randomness at tournaments. When you turn up, you don't know who you're going to play. You don't know what army they're going to play. You don't know what list you're going to play. So you need to basically tailor a list to almost to take on all comers, if you like. If you swing it too far one way, you can be caught out, really. So that is input randomness, even in what would be classed as competitive gaming. And this is where controllable input randomness comes in. So games that like Magic do this really, really well. You can choose to build your deck before the game starts. So yes, you're going to have, I think it's 64 cards, I think it is, something like that in a Magic deck. When you draw cards from your deck, you don't know what cards you're going to get, but you have picked the cards that went into that deck originally. So you know at some point the cards you put in there will come out at some point. It's controlled randomness. Super Fantasy Brawl, which is fingers crossed will deliver soon from Mythic, is another good example of this from miniature gaming. There are no dice. There is fixed damage output from the different models. Each kind of champion, if you like, or each hero has 6 cards that they then put into a deck. And yes, it's random which cards you come out with each kind of hand. So you don't know what you're going to be able to do that next turn. However, it is controlled because you only have a deck of 18 cards. You will cycle through them pretty quickly. Now, Warhammer Underworlds falls also into this category. The game can still be played. The game can still be very random. We are rolling dice after all, but the randomness can somewhat be kind of controlled by building the deck that you will work with to create a strategy. If you want to be very objective heavy, if you like, if you want to claim objectives, there's a way you can kind of build a deck and try and control it that way. So yes, it's random what cards you're going to get, what you're going to be able to do each turn, but it's controlled randomness. Now, a game I'm going to be reviewing later on this week is Escape the Dark Sector, which is the follow-up to Escape the Dark Castle from Themeborn Games. And you basically set up that game, or both of those games to be fair, you set them up by building a random encounter deck. And it's controlled by basically having 3 cards from each act. There's Act 1, 2 and 3. You have a starting card and you have a boss card. And for all, it's a random encounter. It's a random encounter in a set deck, if you like. So, for example, if basically every card in that box, you basically just shuffled them together and picked out, let's say, 15 cards, there's a chance that you could sort of face 4 bosses straight one after the other before you even had a chance to pick up any kind of weapons that you need to equip yourself with. Now, that would be completely random and would actually be very detrimental against you. But the game, for all it's random in its nature, it's controlled randomness. Now, a game I reviewed a little while ago called Highlander by Riverhorse Games suffered from this issue because it was possible to draw the card that basically beheaded your character before you'd done anything else in the game. You hadn't had a chance to go through the different decks and to be able to sort of get yourself some mitigating factors. There was a chance that you could literally flip over the top card and you were dead. And it was one of the things that I referenced when I reviewed that. Now, of the two sides of input and output randomness, input is the less dynamic of the two. It's essentially just, it sets up the game and then it leaves players to get on with it. Basically, however that game falls out, Warcry being a perfect example, you just got to kind of deal with it. It does create variety, but it doesn't interfere with skill testing. This is perfect for more skill-based and competitive games. In comparison, output randomness is about constant change throughout the game. Here, basically, the randomness comes after you make a decision. You surrender a lot of control to the dice gods, or to the flip of a coin, or to the flip of a card. And this can be infuriating. Have you ever basically been in one of those situations where you've lost a game, where you've done everything right, but basically you've rolled the dice at the end, you've got all ones, and you've lost the game on that dice roll? This is when too much randomness basically, like I said before, it can feel like a coin flip. You might as well just flip the coin at the start of the game to get it over and done with. However, a few small changes to output randomness can be a great way to test skills of basically be able to improvise on the fly, and also of risk management. This is what brings in those memorable moments that we love to see, and these are the moments that we love to talk about when it comes to games. Dungeons and Dragons is a perfect example of this. And even if the dice roll doesn't go right for you, it can basically lead to more exciting kind of storytelling. So if you're basically equipped as like a sort of a hardened fighter, and every time you come to fight, you basically you have awful rolls on your dice. However, there's that one point in the game where you basically crit an intelligence check, and you get more of the story that you weren't expecting. It completely unfolds the story in a different direction, and that can lead to some really sort of memorable moments. I keep saying memorable moments because those are the bits you remember. Those are the bits that you weren't expecting, and they completely change the game for you and give you an experience probably far outweighing one if it had been pretty scripted, because everything just went by the stats, if you like. It makes for a much more fulfilling role-playing experience. Now, reacting to randomness can create some fantastic twists and turns that you can't see them coming. However, you can be left feeling basically like no amount of skill or any planning has really made any difference. And this is where the controllable output randomness comes in. So games like 40k have a lot of output randomness in their game. There are multiple dice rolls basically for something to happen. You roll to hit, and then you roll to wound, and then your opponent rolls to save, and then you might have a special rule like Disgustingly Resilient, where they can roll again. There's a lot of randomness to get to that point, and you can be left feeling that basically it's a bit of a crapshoot basically. But what you can do is basically, this is where sort of good design comes in, and this is where you can include controllable mitigation things, such as spending command points in 40k. You can spend a command point to re-roll a dice. This is a way to basically to try and overcome those moments where you really need them to happen and the dice just don't go for you. Now, it's also another point where this is where risk management comes in, and knowing when to spend those control points, command points, because you only have so many. It's another way of letting randomness create a different kind of a game, but giving you some control back to do something about it when you really need it to happen. So risk management is just as important a skill, and knowing when to save those finite resources to try and help is also very important. Some games that do this really well, Malifaux does this with its basically cheating fate mechanic and its soul stones. Wild West Exodus does it with its fortune chips, of knowing when to spend them to get an extra action or to add to a particular attack. And Kings of War Vanguard does it as well quite well with its power dice, and basically giving you those extra moments of, I really need to do this heroic thing, this is going to help me out at this particular moment. And the trick is knowing when to push your luck and basically when to kind of hold back. Blood Bowl is another great example of how this works, where basically all your best laid plans can go completely out of the window and fall apart on the roll of a dice. You can fall and scatter. You might not catch the ball. You might not be able to kind of to push it and to go that extra square. However, good players know in which order to complete their actions. They know how to do the plays. So they're mitigating risk. They are sort of balancing the stats of, yes, it's risky to do this dice roll, but if I do everything else first, I'm reducing the randomness of everything that's basically happening. Knowing when to remove the randomness basically relies on a lot of skill in the game. Now, randomness is also a hugely powerful tool that basically games designers and developers, they have that within the game design, but knowing how to constrain it is so important, and it needs to serve the player experience. It shouldn't just be in there because it's an easy way of not balancing a game. It shouldn't be just in there basically just to create some kind of chaos. It needs to add to the player experience. Now, complete randomness does have its place in some games. My son is almost 4 years old, and one of his favourite games for us to play is a game where basically you have a 6-sided dice, which instead of numbers has colours on the sides, and you have dinosaurs with 6 coloured spots on their back, and you roll that dice, and if it's red, you pick up a red disc and you put it on your dinosaur, and then you roll it again, and you basically have to try and get all 6 colours. Now, he absolutely loves that game. There is no skill involved. There is nothing I can do to improve my chances of winning. There's nothing he can do to improve his chances of winning. But it's an educational tool for matching colours. And it also means that players of completely different abilities and completely different skills can still play on a level playing field, if you like. So there are some games where complete randomness isn't always a bad thing. But randomness is inherently unfair, really. But when it comes to games, it is really equally unfair on both players. Just because something is unfair or it's uncertain, it doesn't mean that it can't be skill testing or force you to strategize on the fly when things change. Now, through thinking about randomness and through some of the games I've been playing recently, I've learned that I much prefer games where higher elements of controlled output randomness are included. The critical hits that you get in Warcry, for example. So for those not familiar, if you if you roll a 4 or a 5, you might get 2 points of damage on your opponent. But if you roll a 6, it might be 5 points of damage. That's quite random and it's quite swingy. In God Tier, which I'm really enjoying at the moment, if anybody hasn't seen my review, please do check it out. There are some spiky dice rolls in there, and you can mitigate that to an extent by using your boons or your blights against your opponent to either add dice or take dice away. Whilst it's a very strategic game, putting in those kind of spiky dice rolls stops it becoming too predictable. And again, Kings of War, when you come to roll that nerve check and you know it's the one you need to go off and you get that double 1, that can be very random, but also brings in those moments of like that last ditch effort of being saved. Now, eliminating randomness can usually eliminate fun of a game also. Randomness is to be appreciated as long as it's intentional and it's basically constrained and controlled. Now, randomness is what gives us them swings of kind of impending doom, followed by that like unbridled comeback against all of the odds. And that's what I want from a game, whether I win the game or whether I lose the game. And that's why I think randomness is not to be feared. It's something that should be embraced. And games are better for it if they're designed with that randomness in mind. So, folks, that was a bit of that took a bit longer than I thought it would, but let's have a quick look in here and see what people have been saying. I'll just turn that one off and then I know where I am. Right. Let's go back a bit. Fred Jackson says randomness as long as it's between 1 and 6, or unless it's between 1 and 20 or 1 and 100. It depends on the game you're playing, mate. Steve says he's picking up God Tier next week. No, yeah, you won't be sorry, mate. I promise you won't be sorry. Luke saying Jeff's Ludology podcast is so intellectual in breaking down gaming as science. He blows my mind. I'm a big fan of Jeff Engelstein, mate. Anybody that to be fair, we're really fortunate. We've got James Hewitt in our Patreon group now as well, and he's been chatting about game design, and it's quite enlightening to see just sometimes what we think might be a complicated decision can sometimes come down to I made the board that size because it fits in the box kind of thing. That's what I was constrained to. Or it might be we took that out completely because it just sped the game up. There's some I love the kind of insights that go into understanding sort of random number generation, into designing a game to try and make it fun, if you like. Stu McMurtry saying I really tend to buy God Tier after seeing the minis and hearing more about it. The minis are fantastic, mate. I fell for the game hook, line and sinker. I have since that review video. I've since bought a Kickstarter, a full all kind of all-inclusive, all-in Kickstarter pledge from somebody I know locally. He came to mine tonight and dropped it off. It's sitting over there in a box. I've not had a chance to open it. So I now own everything available for God Tier. I've actually absolutely fallen for that game. And I'm going to be painting up one of the warbands on Wednesday's Hobby Hangout. Lucian, how about to help you, instead of saying randomness, just say the R number? Oh wait, that's something else. There's an element of randomness in that, I think, mate. VG says, I like to play very random armies like Clan Spire and Squigs. It really doesn't matter what you do, a player, if the dice aren't with you. And it's funny, I mean, there's a lot of kind of psychology around rolling dice. Some games intentionally ask you to roll low as a success, because there's a psychological element where people say, I always roll low dice, like I'm always rolling a 1 or a 2. If 1 is now a critical success, psychologically that's a bit of a different mind shift, and you might say, I'm awful at dice rolls, I'm going to play that game instead. Krabby saying, is it really random if it's within a game limit? It's predefined to lead to another action or scenario, surely. It's still random, mate. It's just a controlled amount of random. It's like the difference between, like a dice is a random number generator between 1 and 6, but it can also be a random number generator between 1 and 100. It depends on how many sides are in the dice, and deciding which dice to put into a game is part of that kind of limitation. Why don't more games use a D20, for example? That would give them a wider spread of sort of balancing mechanics between different armies. The problem then comes is that there is such a swing in randomness, because it's increasing the width of those limits. Even if you've got a coin flip is still random. Like, it's not predetermined, it's not weighted on one side heavier than the other. It's just it's a 50-50 coin flip. And it's like playing roulette, for example. If you're playing roulette and it's black or red, if you've bet on red 6 times in a row and 6 times it's been red, the brain basically says one of two things. It either says, I need to stay with red because I'm on a hot streak here and it keeps winning on red, or the brain says, black hasn't been up for a while. Black's due to come out any time now. It must be black next. It's been red too many times. The real thing is every single one is random. The wheel is spun, the ball is thrown in, and it's either going to be red or black, with the odd chance of it being green, of course. But there is no memory to that game. A dice has no memory. It doesn't remember I rolled 6 3 times in a row, so I can't put any more 6s out for a while. That's why it's always random. VJ saying, having to pre-plan too much was why I stopped playing Underworlds and switched to Blitzball. It's more of reactive than planning game. Yeah, I think I quite like that reactiveness, mate, and I think it's one of the reasons I like randomness in my games. I'm not a person that enjoys list building. I'm not a person that enjoys deck building. I'm not even a person that actually enjoys learning to play a game, to be fair. I prefer to just get in there, sort of find out what I need to do, and almost learn on the fly and make decisions on the fly. And I think that's why I enjoy randomness in games. As long as the basic rules are sort of easy enough for me to get my foot in the door, I'll learn as I go, and I'll make mistakes, and I'll learn strategy and I'll learn tactics as I go. But if a game is almost won or lost in the list building phase, if you like for example, there's a lot of 40k where people say basically if you create a certain list, it's an auto win type thing, or certainly used to be in the past. Ninth, I don't think it's quite so much yet because we haven't really seen all of the codexes come out. But that to me isn't that interesting. If the game is won or lost in the pre-game phase, that's not the bit I enjoy. I enjoy the social aspect of it. So yeah, I think that's why I enjoy an element of controlled random output. Luke saying Super Fantasy Brawl is so close, I can't wait. Yeah, that makes 2 of us, mate. James Hanna, good evening to you, sir. Krabby saying, maybe I don't have enough experience to understand, but I'm confused as to how it can be random. Yeah, I think maybe I've just kind of said that there, but it's always random if there is no memory of the last result. Like if you've got a deck of 52 cards and you flip over the first card and it's an ace, there is now a reduced chance that the next card will be an ace, because before, when it was 4, you had a 4 in 52 chance. You've now only got a 3 in 51 chance. So sorry, yeah, 52 cards. You started off with a 4 in 52 card chance. You've now only got a 3 in 53. There is a memory to a deck of cards. It's one of the reasons Malifaux is quite interesting. It's almost, if you're good at card counting, you know if all the high cards have been out, there's less chance of a low card coming, kind of. There's less chance of a high card coming. But anything that has a dice, there is no memory to that dice roll. It doesn't remember what it rolled before. And that's where randomness comes in. Phil says, Blackstone Fortress is based upon controlled randomness. Stu's chatting there as well. VJ says, with the ref to the worst, with reference to the worst game ever. Glenn saying, even BlackJack is a bit late getting on my way home from work. Andy, do you have any beans to spill about Mantic's new ship game? I don't, mate. The only thing I will spill is stay tuned this week. You will be finding out more. I promise that. I checked this morning. I was speaking to Martin from Mantic this morning. I thought we might have had an announcement today, but it's planned for another day. I'm not going to give too much away. But yes, you will hear more this week. Mark Cox is saying, output randomness. He's looking at you, Blood Bowl. Yes, definitely. VJ saying, speaking of Mantic, I'm pretty excited to hear more about this Kings of War starter box. Yeah, I mean, essentially it's Kings of War. There's just, I don't know what models are going to be in them. That's going to be the exciting bit. Is it new stuff we've not seen before, or is it going to just be kind of sort of sprues that are already existing in a nice kind of price box? Ian says, a lesson from Kobayashi Maru. Sometimes you can do everything right and still lose. 100%, mate. 100%. Steve says, I have a few friends who are prone to output randomness. Yeah, I've got friends like that. Christian asked, just sort of sharing the link there for the Patreon as well. Thank you very much, Christian. We've got a nice little group going there. We're up to about 108 people now. It's a fantastic place to hang out in that Discord, and everybody that pledges there is really, really helping me to kind of to keep this dream alive, if you like, of continuing to do this full time in the future. Dave saying he's pretty interested in Kings of War Gobos. Of course it would jump there at just the point when I was starting to look. Where was that one? There it is. Peter says, I do it by lifting and dropping the fruit machine. Steve says, I'm looking forward to the new Kings of War Ratkin. Dirk saying, Goblin Warband looks good. Luke's in there, all I want from Mantic right now is tiny fighting sailboats. Andrew says, good players plan for randomness. Yeah, and I think that's what I was kind of getting at before as well. Even if a game is perfectly balanced and completely remove all randomness from a game, you don't really know what your opponent's going to do. Unless there is a limited number of things they can do, you can never be certain. When I think this is one of the things when games get to like quite competitive play, there's always that optimum sort of play to do. And I think as players get really well versed at games which have very little random, it's almost, I know what you're going to do because that's what I would do, because that's the best thing to do in this situation. Sometimes when a good player, a really experienced player, can play a brand new player, they do some random things, they do some unusual things that you never expected, and being able to react to that is part of being a good player. Dirk says it sounds like Dingo Bling. I forget what it's called now, but he absolutely loves it, mate. Ponzi saying, I want to buy Gods here, but only if it's healthy. I've been burnt too many times. It's as healthy as any game that's out there, mate. I mean, I know people are giving kind of Steamforged a bit of flack at the minute for Guild Ball, but this is a different game. It only released at the back end of last year to Kickstarter backers, and it only went into retail, I think, right at the back end of last year. They've already released 3 new war bands that Kickstarter backers didn't get. So there are 2 coming on September 25th. There was one came out in August. They are continuing to support this game. It's based around a lot more than it's not just a competitive game set. It's based around, it's more of a kind of a skirmish board game which appeals to a much wider crowd. It all depends upon who you're playing. If you buy Warhammer 40k stuff and can't get a game against anybody, you're going to get your fingers burnt. You're going to have stuff that you basically either sell off or you're not going to get any games of. It's much more down to your personal circumstances and who you're going to play against, really. VG saying, so glad James joined the Discord. He's a top bloke and full of amazing insight. And the best bit is he doesn't mind talking about it. It's like not only is it his job and he does it all day, but he'd happily talk about it till the small hours of the morning. Lee says, totally agree. Randomness is needed to give them epic moments. Too much randomness can be a bad thing, though. Early editions of 40k had a lot of randomness that just sucked. I think sometimes extra randomness can cover a multitude of sins when it comes to not very balanced kind of factions or armies, if you like. it can cover up some really poor rules writing as well. If you just throw a lot of randomness in there, you kind of blame the dice and not the fact that the game isn't particularly great, if you like. And that's why you need randomness in a game to create those sort of I didn't expect that moments. Otherwise, it's kind of scripted. If it, when you see sometimes you see people playing chess and they go, well, I'm going to do that, you're going to do that, then I'll do that, then you'll do that, and I'll do that, and then it's game over. And they basically stop the game like sort of before they've even got to that point. I don't want to play a game that is that prescribed. Like I don't want to play a game like reading a book. I like it. I want some randomness. I want those things to not always go my way. So when it does go my way, I'm twice as pleased. It gets the kind of is it like the endorphins going in your brain? Those moments of kind of despair. Oh no, I've lost this, and all of a sudden you get like 3 6s, and all of a sudden you're back in it. Those are the moments that you remember. Those are the moments you want. Andrew Fairbank saying, just going to go ahead and mention the scene from Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance. Exactly, mate. There's always a chance. Phil says, I was going to say a certain sort of randomness really are attractive to new and casual players, yet abhorrent to tournament players. I think if tournament players really hate randomness, they need to choose their games more carefully. That's all I would say. If you don't like randomness and you're going to get salty when the dice don't go your way, you're playing the wrong game. And by the same stretch, if you're somebody that loves randomness and you play a game where you absolutely get your arse handed to you every time you play because you're just not skilled enough and the randomness isn't there, you're playing the wrong game. I think that's just kind of how it is. Crabby saying, I see what you're saying. I think, basically, as I said before, anything that doesn't have a memory is random. It's controlled by the. If we take dice, it's controlled by how many sides that dice has, but it's a random number every single time. Fabian saying, it's good when I make a choice and then roll the dice, but boring when you roll the dice and then make a choice. Yeah, because that's almost not randomness in that respect, isn't it? I mean, it's a random number, but you're right. If you roll the dice, and I'm trying to think about that now. I quite like the way Warcry handles the, I forget what they're called now, like the command dice at the start, if you like. I like the way you roll the dice and then decide what you want to do with those dice. That's almost like resource management. But this is what I've got. So this is what I'm going to do with them. And that gives you a chance to almost to mitigate randomness later in the game. So I like the way it does that. The only thing I wish Warcry did was I wish it had the pick and ban thing from Star Wars Legion when you're setting up the boards at the start. It's easy for you to house rule that, but I just kind of wish that was a rule from the start, really. Basically, pick 3 cards from each deck. Each player gets to ban one, if you like, and you're left with the other one. Marcus saying D12 games are rare. You do get a few, mate, but they're few and far between. A lot of River Horse games have a mixture. I think they call a lot of their games, I think it's called like a D-deck system, and it's a mixture of like there's a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, and a D12. I think games like the Hunger Games has that in. I can't remember if Pacific Rim does, but certainly a lot of the River Horse games I've played are. You've got obviously Infinity has D20s. You've got Wild West Exodus has D10s. So you do see them kind of more than you would imagine. And then obviously you've got games like Malifaux that don't have any dice at all, but use a deck of cards. And like I said before, basically a deck of cards has a memory. Once a card's being played, it's not coming back till you reshuffle that deck. So actually that can really give a very strategic and interesting way to play the game. Pomsey saying, I just buy games for hobby purposes, to be fair. That's a good point. Yeah, exactly, mate. In that case, it doesn't matter what game you buy or what miniatures you buy. If you're getting enjoyment from it, then it's money well spent. That's the way I see it. A game could be kind of... I said this on Twitter when I mentioned something at the weekend. Somebody was saying to me about basically games being cancelled. And I said, look, unless that company's going to come round and take all my toys away, I've still got what I paid for. Like, I'll still have got the enjoyment from playing the game. I buy a game to play it now. I don't necessarily worry about where it'll be in 4 or 5 years' time, because essentially I might be playing something else in 4 or 5 years' time. I might have already sold my stuff. If everything I buy, I worry about what will it be doing in 4 or 5 years' time, I'd never buy anything, basically. Tim Kelly's in. Good evening, Tim. How are you doing? Hethwell as well. Good to see you, mate. He says, cheers, crowd, chaps and gals. Dirk's just run out of Goblin Green. Vijay says, yeah, the whole being able to predict what's going to happen in a game is really boring. It frustrates me when mini wargaming do that. They call a game and just run through what will happen instead of playing the game out. Yeah, for me, I mean, I do like playing tournament level games. If I get into a game, I like playing to be able to test myself against better players. I like being able to play more games. I like being able to see all of the little tips and tricks that I would never have worked out myself. So there's always a place for kind of high level gaming, like in my personal gaming. But first and foremost, I play to have fun. Like nobody's paying me to win games. It's not like my life depends. I'm not going playing poker for a living, for example. I play tabletop games to have fun, to make new friends, to interact across a tabletop, to be socially kind of sort of interactive with people. If a game is too predictable, then some of that gets lost a little bit. For me, anyway. John says, I like randomness. My dice seem to love me. It's not random when they only ever roll ones, mate. That's the problem. Pomsy saying there, those new GW long dice as random as normal square dice? Honest question. I don't believe so, mate. I'm sure I've read something somewhere that suggests that they're not, but they would need to be perfectly weighted, I think, if there's any slight imbalance in the weight of those dice, because they roll over those sides so easily, much more easily than a normal six-sided dice. I think it's potentially less random. Andrew says, have you heard of martingale betting system where you lose, you double the next bet? I have, mate. Yeah. I think it's basically I've looked into it. I like that. I like looking into those kind of things, like in BlackJack when you use kind of basic strategy and stuff. Martingale system essentially basically is if you put a £2 bet on red, and if red comes up, you take the £2 that you won and you go back to £2. If you put £2 on red and it loses, you then double up and you put £4 on the next time. And then basically if you win £4 back. That £4 pays for the £2 you lost originally, gives you your £2 of winnings and puts you back to square one again. And essentially you just keep doubling up. But there gets a point where you double, like if you lost, sort of as you're saying there, 13, 14 times in a row, you need a huge stack of cash to enable you to win £2. Essentially, so there's a point where basically you have to just cut your losses. So unless you have bottomless pits of cash, it is a guaranteed way to win at playing roulette. However, you need to have balls of steel and very, very deep pockets, because if you go on a losing streak, you're going to be gambling a lot of money to try and win £2. VG says they decided to play the game out one recently and it actually turned out different and provided a really cool moment that wouldn't have happened if they'd called the game. That's exactly my point, mate. Sometimes randomness can send a game in a completely different direction. Something obviously random happened that they weren't expecting. Hethwell says, best war games are the ones with several layers of command and control decision levels with chance, be it cards, dice or chit pulls, adds tension, narrative and dynamic battles. Yeah, as I mentioned, like kind of in the main sort of speech part, it really is down to how you control. Input randomness is all about, before you've done anything, like if you think about it in video games, randomly generated worlds, randomly generated maps, random spawn points, that kind of stuff. And then basically you then have to kind of set your strategy against the battlefield, if you like, that's out in front of you. Output randomness is stuff that happens because you do something. I'm going to hit you, I roll a dice, now this is when the random thing happens. And if you can then have controlled randomness, controlled output randomness, that's almost when you get that sweet spot really of it's still being about player skill. It's still about kind of the person who knows the most or can play the best will probably still win 9 times out of 10. But there is always that chance of those memorable moments. If you take things like Dead Zone, for example, or what else could I think? Dead Zone's a good example. If you roll an 8, you get an exploding 8. If you've got your little small guy, he only gets to roll 1 dice against these, like the kind of the big opponent, and you need 2 or 3 successes to basically to hit them, and you're only rolling 1 dice. You're never going to get 3 successes. unless you roll an 8, and then you roll another 8, and then you roll another 8, and all of a sudden you get those kind of that 8 chain, or 8 train as it's also called, and all of a sudden your little guy in his last ditch effort is taking out that big guy. Those are the moments that you will talk about. If you're in a tournament setting and that happens, and that's how you win the game, you will talk about that for the rest of the weekend without a shadow of a doubt. Those are the bits that we love. You might not like to be on the other end of it, but maybe you knew there was a random element that could happen. Like, don't leave yourself in that situation if you like. Jason says, I'd like to see more games using a mixture of dice. Well, I've seen something recently. What does it? Oh, it's Burrs and Badgers. It uses a mixture of different dice. Go down a little bit. Marcus is saying, when a friend who math hammers all the time said 6 Gene Stealers statistically lose to 6 Terminators the majority of the time, I got out my dice and rolled 100 samples and proved him wrong. I think statistically he's probably right, but you need to roll a huge number of dice over a long period of time to get the average, if you like. It's like if you roll 2 dice, the average is 7. You're like, over a long enough statistical sample size, the total of those 2 dice will turn out to be 7, because there are more sort of chances to add up to 7, like a 6 and a 1, a 2 and a 5, a 4 and a 3. There's more chances of it adding up to 7 than anything else. But like even 100 rolls, for example, might not be enough. So it's one of those things. It swings and roundabouts, but it's the fact that in that given game, they might only be, say, 30 or 40 dice rolls, and that's not enough of a sample size to give you average every time. And that's why those kind of moments still work. That's where those Terminators might miss every single time they try and shoot those Gin Stealers. Luke says, I have used that system so we could carry on drinking for free in Vegas before. We hit some bars. Good place to chat and drink. Yeah, it's just scary once the numbers start to stack up, mate. Marcus saying, yeah, he was salty. Adam Edgar, hello, mate. How are you doing? I hope you're on the mend as well, mate. Another BlackJack Arena who's had an operation recently, mate. I hope you're on the mend. VG saying, love exploding 8s. Yeah, I quite am. I remember seeing them first in Dystopian War, I think it was. That was the first time I'd really sort of seen them in a game. Dirk says, I like some micromanagement to control randomness, like in Burrs and Badgers with the fade point things, where you can buy additional dice. Yeah, so talking about kind of like mitigation and stuff, like God Tier, for an example, just because I'm all over that at the moment, has a lot of like sort of mitigation in that game. So it's interesting that basically it's not about winning the entire game sometimes, it's about winning individual turns. So you can afford to lose one turn to get you in a better position to try and let you win turn 2, which will give you more victory points. You might actually deliberately lose a turn by not taking out a champion, because there's no point taking that champion out and putting him back to full health, because when you get those 3 victory points for him, or 4 victory points, whatever it is, that's not enough to win you this turn. So leave him on low health for the next turn, and then take him out when it makes a difference. There's mechanics in the game where if you lose a turn, you get an advantage of setting up the battlefield for the next turn. I like all of those kind of mitigation type stuff, and it adds to those kind of memorable moments. The dice can be swingy at times, but that just brings in a little bit of kind of a bit of randomness into a game that is actually very technical and very tactical. Ian says, I like randomness, but I do think there's a bit of a scale between setup time investment and how decisive randomness can be. Hate it when a game ends right out of the gate and you have to reset up. I agree, mate, and I would add to that as well is that too much randomness in a game that lasts a long time is also counterproductive, intuitive rather, or counterproductive, I should say, because what will happen is, if the game is swinging all over the place and you know you can't win, no matter how much randomness comes, you might have set up perfectly, you might have executed your plan perfectly, but the dice just aren't going your way, and the game gets to a point where you're basically just going through the motions. That can be bad. But if I go back to Warcry, for example, those games last about 45 minutes. If you get a bit of an odd setup You can just re-rack and and just do a different setup before you even play. Or you could just play it out and see what happens. If the game only lasts 30 or 40 minutes anyway, you don't mind a little bit of randomness because the game will be over soon enough. And then you can go again and try again and play a different one, or play the same scenario from the other side as the attacker or the defender. So sometimes more randomness in a game can be beneficial when the game isn't that long to start with. Heathwell says, Necromunda, I had an Escher Juvie Survivor Goliath onslaught against all chances. Like it became historic and we still talk about it 20 years after. Without randomness, it wouldn't happen. That is exactly my point, mate, yeah. Christian Shelling to the Facebook group, thank you very much, sir. Mark saying, all I was trying to prove is that he would not calculate the dice completely, so he should actually play the game and not look at the math. Ah, okay, that's a different point, mate. He's like I said before, he's probably statistically right, but that's not what happens in a game. In a game where you roll dice, anything can happen. You're not rolling enough, as I said before, you're not rolling enough to get a statistical average. So you shouldn't just ignore that and go by the stats. If that's the case, don't roll dice at all. Just go by percentage chances. So there's a 70% chance he'll win. So yeah, that means he wins more often than he doesn't. So there you go. Like why would you? Rolling dice is part of the fun. It's one of the reasons when people do battle reports, people want to see the dice rolls because they want to see those moments of like, my God, he's just rolled 5 dice and got 5 sixes, like to win the game. If you like, that's what people want to see. They don't want to see someone go, well, yeah, 9 times out of 10 he'll kill you. So let's just call it a game. They want to see that 1 time out of 10. David saying, in Rangers of Shadow Deep, the civilian we rescued in M1S1 went on to slay the most amount of giant spiders in M1S2, so I hired her as my recruit. She is a legend. This is my point. Like, when we played Dungeons and Dragons with Christian as our DM, my character was a fighter, and he basically fluffed every time he tried to kill something. It was awful, but it added to the story. Like the rest of the party, he become a bit of a joke. That basically was just this big guy with a battle hammer that couldn't hit the side of a barn door kind of thing. Heathwell says, a good commander will control the chaos that may result from rules. It will learn to balance the risk of it and take it to heart as part of the fog of war. Yeah, I agree, mate. Pomsy said, generally envy people who play enough games that they have to worry about these problems. Yeah, me and you too, me and you both, mate. I mean, I play a lot of games, but I don't play certain, like, there are some games I play a lot more than others because I genuinely really do enjoy them. Warcry is a prime example. But there are other games that I still enjoy, but I just like to play them infrequently. Like, I've still got that game. I can still always play that game. Like, board gamers feel very differently about board games as that miniature gamers feel about miniatures games. And I know miniatures gamers will tend to say, well, I spend a lot more money on my army. But board gamers spend a hell of a lot of money on board games, let's not forget. You quite easily spend £100, £200 on a board game to maybe only play it once or twice. But again, that game is always there. Just in the same way that miniatures game is still on the shelf. The way people still played Blood Bowl after support was stopped for it. The way people still played Necromunda. The way people still play Mordheim. Like, things don't vanish into thin air just because a company stops supporting something. The only reason a game ever stops is because you stop playing it. And it might be there's nothing new comes and you might lose interest in that game because nothing's new's coming. But it only stops because you stop playing it. Tony says, if there's no randomness in a game, then it seems more like a puzzle than a game to me. Yeah, I know what you mean. And the problem with that is, mate, is there is a solution to that puzzle. There is a way to solve that puzzle. And once you solve the puzzle, then it loses its fun for me. And this kind of comes back to my point. There needs to be enough randomness in there that there is never there's never that ultimate solution. Otherwise, what happens is everybody just chooses the same list. Mark says he really came around after I showed him and he played 40k for several years from 4th to 7th. That's good, mate. Andrew says the Orc Boys at stapled a bloodthirster for 3 combats. It's that kind of stuff, mate. Hethwell saying to Tony there, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe not the games they want. Yeah. And they're saying, Aga Dirk, Dirk, Dirk. Exactly. That was exactly it, wasn't it? Jim Street saying, in RPG, Savage Worlds has exploding dice too. I love those mechanics. I've never seen exploding dice in an RPG before, mate. I didn't realise that. Tim saying, thanks, COVID. Pomsy saying, I'll come across the UK next year and we'll get a game in, because he's saying to Krabby there. Yes. GVC Paints, good evening, mate. How are you doing? Krabby saying, so what's the negative effect of randomness would have on a game? Can you use 40k as context because my brain isn't working well today? Yeah, so the negative of randomness is if you've got a tank in 40k, right, and you are shooting at a small kind of sort of group of orc boys, in the real world, that tank would absolutely blast every single one of those orcs off the board. It would blast them into smithereens. They would not survive that kind of thing. So people who don't like randomness say, look, this model is worth 600 points, let's say. It's shooting into a model that's worth 30 points. It would blow that out of the water. All of the kind of the stats say that should happen. But when they roll the dice to hit those orcs and they get all ones and they miss, then they get salty about it because they go, it's just not possible. There's absolutely no way that tank would have missed those orcs, kind of thing. And then people start saying, oh well, maybe it was kind of like the orcs were didn't believe in the missile coming at them, so it didn't happen, and all them kind of things. And people get a bit salty because it's like it should happen. Like there's a real world reason why shooting a tank at a bunch of people would never miss, kind of thing. And that's where randomness comes in. Those people who would prefer it to be automatic wounds, for example. So it says, when my tank shoots at them, it auto does sort of 6 damage, if you like. There are lots of games that have automatic damage. If you take Wild West Exodus, for example, you only have 1 wound. So if you get hit, you're dead. That's it. If you get shot with a gun or a tank or a laser beam or whatever it is, you're dead. The game builds in mechanics to mitigate that death by there's things where you can put another player in front of the bullet and he takes the bullet instead of you and things. So that's when randomness becomes negative. If there's too much randomness, it basically becomes unpredictable. You can't plan. It's like I've spent weeks building this list. There's no way this tank would miss them those orcs or those goblins or something. Hethwell says, people still play Epic and War Master and Warhammer Ancients, so things never go away if players want it. Yeah, exactly, mate. Spider-Lord, good evening, says, randomness is fine as long as there are ways to mitigate it. You don't even always have to have ways to mitigate it, really. It's about controlling it. But I guess mitigate's probably a similar thing, but it's not about removing the randomness by mitigating it. It might be a case of random things happen and the consequence of that is you get to do something different. Barry says, I lost an early 8th edition 40k game in the first term. Kill the Warlord card. He had last placement and I lost initiative. He had some stratagem that allowed first turn deep strike, one-shotted my Warlord. I guess there's 2 sides to that. Some of it is randomness, if he's had to draw those cards at random, but if it's not random, if basically he had the choice of what to do, then basically, like, that's the point. Why would you, can you imagine spending weeks and months painting up that army to put it on the table to basically be wiped off the board through no fault of your own other than you didn't get first turn? Like, that is not a fun experience. Vormwood's in as well. Good evening, Vormwood. How are you doing? Pomsy saying Carcassonne and Catan are on sale on Switch, but I don't trust the AI. They're going to beat me every time. I'm always a little bit dubious, mate, about AI. It's like I'll quite happily sit at a table and play a BlackJack with a human dealer, but I wouldn't want to play online against a kind of computerized system because I'd always think it's stacked against me. Wardrobe says, read any real-world war stories and you'll see instances of the strangest of circumstances. Exactly. War is not predictable. If it was predictable, people wouldn't go to war. If they thought they were going to lose and it was predictable, nobody would ever go to war. That's just how it would be. GVC says, if you've read a lot of first-person World War II soldier autobiographies, there's some crazy randomness that happens in battle. Yeah. Wardrobe says, same battle, a lone lieutenant was able to go up to a panther, stick a gammon bomb on it, and climb on top, drop a grenade in it, and there were German soldiers all over the place. Yeah, exactly, mate. Ian says, I remember a similar discussion among the hardcore wargamers. You need the randomness because historically there are always those extraordinary results, like Thermopylae or Battle of Samar in Late Gulf. I don't even think it's necessarily about replicating real-world randomness sometimes. It's although, to be fair, it's as good a reason as any. It's still got to be controlled randomness. Like, it's not... If we compare randomness to real-world events, controlled randomness are all the things that basically can happen to us. If there was no controlled randomness, like, sort of... I can't even think now. An alien spacecraft drops out of the sky and squashes you on your way to work kind of thing. Like, that can't happen. I'm going to get into some weird conversations now. That can't happen because aliens don't exist or we've never seen any yet. But that's random. It would only be randomly possible if we really extend the limits of randomness, if you like. I'm probably going down a complete wrong path there. Andrew Fairbanks, sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you. Exactly, mate. Marcus says, here's one for the ages. My friend played Inquisitors in 40k and had a Vindicate assassin who failed to hit or kill anything for 3 whole turns. My friend fired the model and has never used it again. There are a lot of people who have kind of dice jails and stuff for dice that refuse to roll crits. Vormwood says, but I feel those players who get super salty about rolls would be the same people who are highly competitive tournament players and may not just play to enjoy the game, feelings and all. I think we have to kind of, like, let's not give competitive players a bad name here. People who play competitively are still playing for fun. They enjoy super competitive play and they enjoy playing against other players who enjoy super competitive play. It's just when you get a mix of gamers, that's when the issue comes. When somebody who likes a really casual game plays against somebody who enjoys a really competitive game, that's when you get problems. So competitive gamers and competitive games in or of themselves, not a bad thing. It's the mismatch of player expectations that's the problem. Hezwell says, now the million-point question, what is your favourite die, Andy? Do you know what? I actually quite like D10s and D20s in games like Infinity and in Wild West Exodus. I think they just give something a little bit different. I like the way they roll, if I'm honest. However, you can't go past a D6. You know, they're the most common dice ever, aren't they? Marcus says, I've seen some strange stuff in my life, but not aliens. There you go. That would be random, wouldn't it? Dirk says, great, now I have to listen to that song. That's because everybody's singing War. Peter Coomer says, good evening, BlackJack Arenas. I've just got home from work. Guess tomorrow will be a good time to try out BlackJack clips. P.S. I've seen your thumbnail pics, Andy. You should think about safety at work. Yes, being hit by rolling dice. There you are. Maybe that's a random event. JVC says, I found 2 dice in the parking lot of a game store years ago. I knew why they were there. Whenever I need double ones, I break out those dice. 100%, mate. Wardrobe's in the D10. Yeah, big fan of D10s there as well. Peter saying a D3. So, folks, that's I think I've actually caught up with the chat tonight, which is a nice change. For those that have come in late, you can obviously either go back and watch the start of this and see the main kind of point of the chat, the bit I was talking about, or I do have a new thing now where essentially I kind of record this piece to camera and record it separately as well, and then I'll kind of I'll rejig it a little bit and put it up tomorrow night. It's what I'm calling basically BlackJack clips. It's basically the highlight of what I've been talking about. I use highlight in really loose inverted commas there. The highlight of what I've been talking about, really. And it's another opportunity for those that don't really like live streams to try and kind of like to catch up on, because like this kind of stuff, I've got like 12 pages of notes here that I've gone through and kind of wrote down my thoughts and kind of tried to phrase things in the right order, so I say the things that I want to say in the right context. Those things take time to kind of to pull together. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do. Tuesday nights is that kind of that catch up clip. So if you ever can't make a Monday night and you don't fancy kind of catching up with the full 2 hours later on, that's a good way to kind of catch up on the main topics. Wardrobe's in good discussion. Thank you very much, mate. Thank you. James says the more dice you get to hurl, the better. I only play games to chuck dice. Yeah, another way to kind of to mitigate randomness as well is by adding dice. Having more dice to roll will always give you a sort of a better chance of success, if you like. I think technically having more dice to roll is still more advantageous than rolling a lower number, I think. I'm sure I've read that somewhere. It depends, I suppose, as well. Lord Mason saying, don't forget the slow grow. Yeah, it's not technically a slow grow, mate. It's going to be more of a painting challenge, really, because we're not really growing stuff on this one. It's more of a painting challenge. But yeah, I was going to announce it tonight, but to be fair, I've not really had a chance to formulate the details. I'll give everybody, just those that are in the chat tonight, I'll tell you what's happening. So basically, we're going to be doing a bit of a painting challenge. The theme of the painting challenge is going to be punk, and we've come up with this has been between me and the Patreons. Basically, we've come up with this theme, which is punk, because it opens it up to a number of different sort of game systems, miniatures that you want to paint. You can have cyberpunk, you can have steampunk, you could have kind of like punk as in the sort of bit like Judge Dredd. It doesn't really matter. You can have punk as in you might want to paint a Mohican like on one of your Burrs and Badgers minis or something like that. It's meant to be a bit of a theme for people to be challenged and to do something a bit different, but I don't want to basically exclude people. So if you can, no matter how tenuous the link to punk is, if you can think of a link, then it qualifies for this. And what I'm probably going to do, this is the bit I haven't really kind of fine-tuned yet, I'm probably going to say about 6 to 8 weeks. So you'll have a little bit of time to basically paint up maybe a small wall band. It might be a big model that you've always wanted to paint up in that kind of theme. You might want to just paint something up with a safety pin through its nose. I don't know, but punk basically is the theme. So if you can think, you might want to paint some Necromunda models. You might want to paint your core space stuff, which has that kind of sci-fi punk feel about it. You might want to paint Infinity stuff. Like a lot of Infinity stuff has some strange hair colours and things like that. You might want to kind of sort of do something along them lines. Steampunk falls into a number of different things. Even things like Wild West Exodus, there's an element of steampunk in there as well, if you're painting Malifaux models. So the idea is it kind of just opens it up to a really wide theme, and essentially you just have to complete the challenge. I'm not bothered about the quality of your painting. I'm not even that fussed about how many you paint. The idea is it's just to try and motivate you, give you a little deadline to say, do you know what it is? I've been in a bit of a hobby slump for a while. I'm going to take part in the challenge, and I'm going to try and paint something. And what I'll do at the end of the challenge, anybody in the Patreon group that completes it, I'll compile all of their pictures and we'll be showing them up on a live stream and showing people, with your permission, of course. I'll be showing what's being completed and stuff. And I might even pick like one that I particularly like, or I might get somebody I know to pick the one that they like the best from the Patreon submissions, and maybe have a small prize or something like that. But it is open to everyone, but obviously for those that basically financially support me on a monthly basis, there's a little bit of extra incentive for those ones as well, and hopefully a little bit of extra incentive for you to come across and join in. Because one of the reasons I'm doing it like this way is Facebook is not a good way to pull together multiple people working on the same topic, because basically threads just get lost. It doesn't always show me all the threads. The way you set up events is a bit of a nightmare on Facebook. Within the Patreon group, I can set up a channel for it, and everything gets pushed into there. So if you are interested and you want to join in with the behind the scenes hobby aspect as well with everybody else, please do consider joining the Patreon. It's $2 a month is your minimum pledge. It's not a lot to pay to join in with them, with the awesome community that's already there. But if you don't want to join, that's absolutely fine too. You can still take part in it, even if you just use it to kind of motivate you. All I really want to do is to get people painting and get people enjoying their hobby. That's the real motivation, really. But I'll set some dates around that and post something in the Facebook group, and probably put it up in the community tab of YouTube as well for those of you that aren't fans of Facebook. Where was I up to there? Yeah. Ian says, how do you feel about games using 2d6 or 2d10 instead of one die? I think it introduces, it probably evens out a bit of the randomness, really, because it's, if you roll a d6 and you need to get a 4 plus, it's a 50-50, isn't it? I mean, a lot of Warhammer is based around 4 pluses. If you have 2 dice and you're trying to get an average roll, it maybe smooths out some of the spikiness of that kind of stuff, and it also widens out the band of numbers that you can use. So you can have one model that needs a 2 plus, and you can have another model that needs an 11 plus, and that gives you a bit of a wider band. So I don't mind multiple dice, if I'm honest. Jim Street says, I hate rolling 1 die, so lame. It just never feels quite as satisfying, does it? Tony saying, I have some weird dice from Dungeon Crawl Classics. I need to see a picture of them, mate. Pomsy saying, who doesn't like this live stream? I take personal offence at that. I don't know what that was about, mate. I must have missed something. Oh, it must be about if people don't like it. There's quite a few people just don't have the time to watch it, mate. Even if you haven't got the time to watch it live, a lot of people just are not interested in listening to 2 hours. They'd much rather have 10-15 minutes of really kind of specific on-topic kind of chat, really. And I'm trying to kind of cover all bases by doing it this way. David Moffat says, I really like your catch-up clips. Thank you very much, David. Peter says, if you play a lot of games solo like I do, randomness is your friend. Yeah, that's what I think you bring a fair point there. Randomness in a solo game is probably even more necessary, because otherwise, if it was too predictable, you'd kind of know. You'd find a way to just to min-max the game and basically just sort of play it like that. It's like one of the most random games there is, board games, is Monopoly. It's hugely random. And people say, oh, it's a horrible game, like it's a terrible game. I hate how random it is. However, what I think what's forgotten about is the fact that Monopoly was designed to be intentionally very random. It was designed to show that basically in life, things aren't fair. Things don't always go your way. You can't always plan and have everything sort of happen for you. And that was one of the reasons Monopoly is very, very random. And for that respect, it succeeds where it sets out. It just doesn't make for a very good game experience. Phil saying there, the more dice you roll, the more you will tend towards the statistical average. Yeah, exactly, mate. Marcus says, but since I have seemed to be a very lucky person when rolling dice in RPG, some of my friends have me pick out new sets of dice for them. It seems to work quite often. You should sell that, mate. Bottle it and sell that. Professional dice picker. Peter says, I find something oddly rewarding when throwing in the mixed dice for The Walking Dead. Different coloured dice. Yeah, there is something about that. Andrew says, had a thought on the condensed show. Double check it's not going to screw up your channel in the YouTube algorithm. To be honest, mate, it might do, but I don't really care about that anymore. I am essentially going to make the videos that I want to make, and hopefully people come along for the ride and find it. If in 12 months' time I find that my channel's dipping, I'll bear that in mind. But I did 5 videos last week. 2 live streams, 3 kind of pre-recorded stuff, and my views are up. I had more views than I did the week before because I made more content. So I think when it comes to the algorithm in general, if you have a good thumbnail and a good title and you produce a good video, you have to kind of hope that eventually it's going to it will be shared by YouTube. Like if enough people watch it for long enough and enough people see the thumbnail and decide it's something they want to watch, that's in my control. I have to try and craft those videos that people want to see, really. So yeah, I'm not too worried about stuff. I can't control the algorithm. I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about it. Otherwise, I'd never make a video. I'd end up saying, is this one going to be good enough to get shared? Or is this one going to kind of trigger things? I'm better off just doing what I enjoy, and hopefully people enjoy that too. It's another reason why this business model that I've got around this, doing it full time, isn't that reliant upon views on YouTube. It's more reliant upon the people that enjoy it kind of supporting me, really. and whether that's at $2 or whether that's at $20, really, it's that's up to individuals. But it means that I can make the content that you want to see. It might not be the most popular content for the wider kind of YouTube folks, but it might be stuff that you want to see. And that's That's essentially what I want to do. I want to make the stuff about the games that don't get any coverage. I want to make stuff about the things that surprised me, that I didn't expect to like, but I ended up loving them. I want to make the stuff that is kind of conversational like this. You don't necessarily get this kind of content everywhere because it's maybe not the most popular content, but as long as there's an audience for it and the audience wants that enough, I like to think I'm basically filling a different kind of niche, really. Jim's saying there, Marcus says Cyberpunk. Jim's saying Laserpunk. Cyberpunk, mate, with a question mark. Essentially, Cyberpunk is kind of sci-fi punk. It's space punk. It's like Necromunda is kind of cyberpunk. Steve saying night all, peace out. Thanks for coming in, Steve. I'll catch you later. Heswell says Escher punk rock band. Yeah, punk. God save the Queen. Jason says anybody try Turbo Dog paints? My local shop just put up a display. I've never heard of them, mate. VJ saying, Marcus says, music can save the world. I've just watched the latest Bill and Ted film. Yeah, don't bother. VJ said 6 to 8 weeks could be a single 28mm at my speed. That's what I was thinking, mate. Even for the slow painters, 2 months must be enough. Jim Street says, which Dreadball team need to be punkers? Dreadball's a great example, mate. I think there's an element of cyberpunk to Dreadball. You can imagine, like, if you went to if Dreadball was a real thing and you went to a real Dreadball match, you can imagine there's going to be some kind of like cyberpunk kind of music playing. Andrew saying going with a guy in a suit, the most punk thing of all time. Exactly, being anti-establishment by being establishment. There you go. VG saying great as long as you spray over a gloss black. Pomsy saying I am punk and just paint whatever I want. There you go, mate. You qualify then. Where did that go now? How did that just jump when I turned my back for 1 second? Jason says, VJ, are they all metallic? What do you think about them? How much per bottle? I'm talking about paints. Peter Cooman says, I have nothing punk. I'm sure we can come up with something, mate. Maybe you're being punk by being anti on message. There you go. Paint whatever you want, mate. Heatherwell says Facebook is Satan. It's good for certain things, mate. It's nice to kind of see what's happening in the hobby and things, and it's nice to see people sharing their stuff. But if you're trying to organise something and pull it together, it is a nightmare. Marcus saying, yeah, my VAR Golf I ordered on eBay just arrived at my door. Nice one. David saying, I'm almost never on Facebook these days. I tend to use it for my own group, mate, and I tend to look to see like what else is happening on the games I follow or like friends and stuff like that. But I don't share any, like my personal Facebook, if you like, my personal account, I never put anything at all on that. JVC, Peter Cummins says, wait, Astarian Kalishi for Dreadzone has Mohawks. Of course it counts, mate. There you go. Of course it counts. Adam Edgar saying, randomness in games is one of my favourite parts, especially in 40k, when a cultist takes the last wound on a champion at his max range or an entire Tau gunline fails to wound your demon prince. Exactly, mate. Exactly this. That's what I like too. Marcus says, Monopoly can destroy friendships. It certainly can, mate. Spiderlord says, I love these streams. They give me good excuse to get the brushes out. That's kind of always been the point of these kind of things, really. It's just meant to be about... Oh, just had a donation there. What was that one? I must have missed that somehow. Let me see where it was. I just want to see the doggy. What doggy, mate? Where were we at there? Yeah, good excuse to get the brushes out. It's an excuse to pull people together, mate. Like, we're a big community, really. Like, the BlackJack Legacy thing has always been about community, about pulling people together. And it might be actually that we might be a community that just don't fit in elsewhere or don't feel comfortable in other groups. Maybe we're not competitive gamers. Maybe we like to play so many different games that we're not that knowledgeable about one particular game where we feel we can take part in those kind of deep sort of tactical discussions. This is just a place for hobbyists to hang out and kind of come together and share some kind of stories and talk about the games you love and just feel part of a community, really. That's all this has always been about. Peter says, a friendship that gets destroyed over something trivial as board game is no friendship. There is that, mate, as well. Ryan says, evening all, apologies for lateness. Nice to see you here, Ryan. Never apologise, mate. Pomsy said, did you give your hero quest away yet? I forgot, but I saw there's a new one coming out. I've not done it yet, mate. I always said I would give it away once I'd finished painting it. I ain't finished painting it yet, unfortunately. I haven't forgot. I've got a list of all the people that were there when we hit 100 Patreons. I've got a full list of that, and basically anybody else that's in the Patreon when I give it away as well will also qualify. So if you were a Patreon member, but aren't any longer, but you were there when we hit 100, you will still be included in it. So nobody's going to miss out on that. Christian sharing the affiliate links there as well. Thank you, mate. Thank you. Just on the affiliate links, folks, the one for Australia and the one for America, I've had absolutely no sales at all through those ones. And basically what they're saying is if I don't get any sales in the next 3 months or something like that, they'll essentially just close those accounts down. So if you are in Australia, if you are in the US and you are shopping on Amazon, please do consider just clicking on the link and shopping through my affiliate link. It won't cost you any more. It doesn't affect your delivery dates or any of that kind of stuff. It just means that I recommended you to go and check out some of that stuff, and I make a really small commission from it. It's another way to support a channel without physically paying out of your pocket. If you're shopping in the UK and you're buying from Goblin Games, for example, shopping through my link gets me a small commission. You pay the same price, you get the same excellent Goblin service, but it's another way to support me and support my business without you spending any extra money. So please do consider some of those affiliate link stuff. It really does help me out, and it doesn't cost you anything more than you were going to spend anyway. Giobachi says, Hostage Negotiator is a great solo game. I really like that, mate. I did a review, like a how to play thing on it a while ago, and I really enjoy that. There aren't a lot of solo games that are only solo games, and that is one of them. VG says, looking forward to the weekend. BlackJack versus VG Morph Blitzball. Yes, mate. We've got an online game coming up on Saturday evening, haven't we? I can't wait. VG says, if Andy's okay, we might even stream a second game onto the Discord. I'm all right with it, mate. If you are, I don't mind at all. Ethwell says, you're an excellent live stream discussion. Host Andy, your interaction is a 12 on a D10 with a reroll, mate, as well. Thank you very much. Yeah, like I say, I might not be the most popular on YouTube. I might not make the most clickbaity stuff. I might not talk about the most popular topics. I might not talk about the drama and the big fallout and the kind of all of the angry stuff. But I just want to make it a nice kind of place for people to come and hang out, and that's why it kind of. That's why it works for me, and that's why I enjoy it, and that's why I honestly do believe, when I say I honestly think this is the best community on YouTube, I'm not just trying to blow smoke up my own ass kind of thing. It's you lot that make it. You lot are what makes this fun. So anybody watching these videos, anybody that helps out, anybody that supports the streams, anybody that supports on Patreon, all that kind of stuff, it's all of you folk that make this the best hobby community, I believe. Because there's so many different games get played. It doesn't matter what game you play, you will feel welcome in that group. There are other groups that are also great communities, but they tend to be focused around particular games. Even when they don't intentionally focus themselves around particular games, they end up focusing on particular games, because there's always like one game that a particular kind of YouTube channel is known for, if you like. Where this one genuinely is a mix of different stuff, and I might talk about one game more than another for a period of time, but it will always be a mix of games. It's like one of those channels where if you don't like the video that comes up today, hang around, because tomorrow there might be one that you're interested in. Marcus says, okay, like your channel, Andy, because you're a chill guy. Try to be positive, but never sugarcoat it. I like the sound of a British accent like Patrick Stewart. Yeah, Patrick Stewart's a good Yorkshireman, isn't he? Yeah, I always try to be positive. I mean, I don't see the point in kind of labouring on the negative side of stuff. If I don't like something, I'll tell you why I don't like something. Or if I don't agree with something, I'll tell you why I don't agree with it. But I'll always give reasons. Like, I'm not just bashing stuff for the sake of it. I'm not anti-GW, or I'm not a fanboy for GW, for example. If I like it, I like it. If I don't like it, I don't like it. But I'll talk about the positive side of things more often, I think. Peter says, the doggy that pops up when you get a donation. That's why I forgot about that, mates. I didn't see the picture come up. I just saw the notification on the top of my screen. I forgot the little doggy pops up. Do you hear the sound as well, by the way? Do you all hear the sound when it happens? Because I obviously turn the sound off on mine so it doesn't come back through the microphone. Pomsy says, I think these times the streams are priceless, especially this one, which is so welcoming and friendly. Thank you, mate. But again, it's only welcoming and friendly because you lot make it that way as well. Like I'm talking to you lot and I'm obviously reading out the chat, but you lot are all chatting amongst yourselves most of the time as well, and it's you lot that make the chat friendly. So thank you very much for what you do too. Lord Maiden said I had a game of Malifaux with a friend and I killed his sniper first turn with lucky card draws. We had another game where he killed a model first turn and then I paralysed a powerful model and won it. I love those kind of games, mate. Swingy stuff like that. Tony saying, we're the hobby punks. There you go, mate. Everybody's entitled to join in the punk theme in that case. David says, I like VJ. We only associate with healthy-minded folk. If you see us there, it's a good place to be. I'm like VJ. Yeah, it's funny, actually. Like, I do see like a lot of the community in other kind of streams and stuff, and they're always the streams that I would watch because I think that they're kind of like nice communities as well. It's like if I take like the Agents of Sigmar guys, I think they're a great bunch too. But their channel and their community are very much focused around Warhammer Underworlds. It doesn't make it a bad thing, but if you don't play Warhammer Underworlds, you probably won't necessarily check them out, the stuff that they do. It's like the guys over at Top Table Gaming as well, Jay and Steve. Like I've held events with them, I'm good friends with them, and I think they have a great community too. But like it or not, they are very much kind of focused around Middle Earth. That's where the main bulk of their kind of audience come from. You can see if they do a Middle Earth video, it always does more views than anything else they do. Where my community or our community really is a mix of all those different things. It really is. There's no one game that really kind of pushes everybody else out. VJ saying, yes, need to talk about whenever the new Hero Quest coming out from Avalon Hill. What it's all about. It's essentially, it's a board game, mate. If you go to their Twitter account, it says basically this is the official Twitter account for new Hero Quest board game. I don't know whether it's going to Kickstarter. I don't know whether it's just going to be released or what. But yeah, will be coming soon. And as soon as we know more, we'll talk about it. For me, though, I have to admit that I don't think it's something I would buy. I think there's an element of rose-tinted glasses with Hero Quest because it got a lot of people into the game, into the hobby rather. But I think there are stronger dungeon crawlers out these days now. I think that's the thing. Mike G said, I didn't know the US one even worked. It works if you click on it, mate. Marcus says, no. Where was that one? Marcus says, no, he doesn't. I'm just one of those Americans that really love British accents. Visions will do the affiliate link. Marcus says, I also know what Cyberpunk is. I do know what Cyberpunk. I was just asking if it was an option. Sorry, mate. Yes. I thought with a question mark you were asking what is Cyberpunk. Yes, of course, mate. Yes, that counts. Dirksen just read an article about Hero Quest by Restoration Games. Does anybody have any solid information? Dirk, my understanding was Restoration Games were trying to get the license for Hero Quest, and I think they were quite confident they thought they had it. And then I was surprised to see at the weekend that basically Avalon Hill, who I think are basically Hasbro, are now bringing out a Hero Quest board game. So I assume that for whatever reason they've managed to kind of pin down the license now. I think that's always been a bit of an issue over time, but it sounds like they've managed to pin down the license, and Hasbro or Avalon Hill are now going to be releasing whether it's an exact copy of the original one, whether it's a more family-friendly kind of intro to wargaming, whether it's nothing except the name. Maybe they've just bought the name and haven't kind of done anything. They're going to do a completely different game. Who knows? But all we know at the minute is in about 6 days' time or something, 7 days' time, we're going to find out more information. And it's called Hero Quest, and it's going to be a board game. So yeah, we'll know more then, mate. Lord Maiden saying the community on Patreon is great as well. A real continuation of the chats and what Andy says as well. Yeah, I must admit I feel like I'm spending less time on Facebook these days because the community in the Patreon is growing. I mean, like I said, there's 108 people in the Patreon now, and there's a big community there now. Do you know what I mean? That takes time as well. Pomsy saying it's a great community. I watch a few other streams and they don't compare. The only downside is Peter Nicholas. Charming, eh? Krabby says, can we discuss how 40k is the best now, please? I still haven't played it, mate. I still haven't played it. Andrew Fairbanks is saying no sound. I think you must have turned your You must have turned your thing off, mate. You must have turned something off. I haven't played 40k yet, mate. As soon as I've played 40k, I'll be able to kind of give an honest opinion on it. And if I think it's the best game, I will shout it from the rooftops, because it's another game that I've almost avoided a little bit because of bad past experiences with the game. So yeah, I want to play it because I want it to be good, basically. I want it to be a game I enjoy. And I don't know whether it will be, and I'll probably still buy minis because I love painting the minis, but yeah, we'll get there. VJ says, having the best hobby community on YouTube since 2014 without begging Henry Cavill to play 40k. I wonder if he just wants to come and have a beer. I'm not even bothered about playing Warhammer with him. I'd quite happily just sit and have a beer with him. Peter says, yes, it makes the sound of coins going through your fingers. That was I knew it made a sound, mate, but I never know whether it actually works or not. Spiderlaw says, Andy, did you see the new Necron reanimation protocols talk about mitigating randomness? You could say mitigating randomness, or you could say power creep. Are they the same things? Red Rose Wargaming says, Alan's favourite character in Warcry is Big Dave, the Ogre Breacher, famous for being the worst Ogre Breacher in the world. Failure is fun. Yes, I agree. Because you know what will be even more fun? The day that he's not a failure. That day that he absolutely wipes the floor with everybody. That'll be awesome. Mike G says, so the US Amazon link sends me to McFarlane Toys Warhammer 40,000 Ultramarines Primus. Is that the only item that helps? No, mate, that is purely just a link to get you into Amazon. If you click on that and then basically go into search, type in whatever you want. As soon as you click on that, basically it registers the cookies that you've gone in through my link, and whatever you shop on during that shopping trip, if you like, will count, basically. So no, that is purely just a link to a product on Amazon, basically. If you search and do your shopping, it all works fine, mate. Vijay says, I've been around the Agents channel since the start. Don't play Underworlds anymore, but I love Pete and Robin, so I stick around. Yeah, they're really nice guys. We were having a little bit of chat, actually. I think it was me and Pete, basically, before lockdown and stuff. And it would be nice to maybe kind of get together and meet up at some point, or maybe even do something together. But yeah, lockdown's put a lot of things on ice, I think. VJ's in there, if they're bringing out a reboot of Hero Quest, they're going to have to do some updated mechanics. Yeah, I would agree, mate. Pomsey's saying, if you leave, I'm never using YouTube again. Mike said, I thought it was only UK Amazon it worked for. Didn't know there were even US links. They are never in the vid notes. They are, mate. They are in the notes of every video, mate. I'm 99% sure. In fact, I'm actually going to go and look now in the description. Let's see if I can find it on here. I'm not sure if it lets me have a look in the description, actually. Let me just have a quick glance on here. So if I say show more. You're right, mate. It's not. It must have come out. It must have reverted back to an old one. I will go and update them, mate. They're in the Facebook group. Christian's just shared them tonight. I'll update them. Thank you for letting me know. Andrew saying, correct my comment, there's no sound when the money comes in. So somebody else said there was, I'm not sure, mate. They should be sound anyway, they should be sound. Grabby says, when we're playing, I'll bring Iron Brew and Jelly Babies. We definitely need to set a game up, mate. I mean, my stuff's built, it's not painted like, but I will definitely still sort of roll some dice and find out how to play. Hethwell says, play historicals, have random fun recreating history. Historicals have never really scratched my itch. I've got my bolt action stuff, and I intend to kind of give that a bit of a try and roll some dice for that. But I must admit, like, it doesn't really scratch an itch for me. I think I like the fact that fantasy and sci-fi is like completely unbelievable at times, if you like. David said, I played a rules mashup including 40k 9th. It was fun. I still have no idea when I play a proper game. Ryan saying, play the game, not the player. There's an element of rightness in that, but for me sometimes I can play a really poor game, but if I enjoy playing with that person, I'll have a fun game. So maybe I am playing the player, I don't know. Pomsey saying, when's this new Warcry start to set out? I need to speak to my accountant. I think we're looking at October, mate, if I remember right. VG saying, where's the Amazon links again? Christian shared the links before me. I was sure I'd put them in the descriptions of the videos. That'll probably be why nobody's shopping on them. Luke said, I just picked up another Underworlds team. I just like cherry picking them now. I like the way the new ones, mate, come with like a pre-built deck. The old seasons didn't. And for anybody that doesn't like deck building, the new seasons are a great way to go. I put it in my kind of 5 sort of good games, great miniatures games for beginners. If you're buying into Beastgrave into the new season, having those pre-built decks is great. And I'm sure with the new season coming up, season 4, we'll see that to continue as well. Also doing the same with Marvel Champions card game. I didn't realise the starter box for that, mate, was so expensive. I saw it at the weekend in Travelling Man, and I didn't realise it was so expensive for that. Bit of chat going backwards and forwards. Lucy, I've been greatly enjoying dealing with the randomness of Reichbusters. I'm glad you're enjoying that, mate. I don't hear a lot about it online other than the games that you're playing. But maybe it's more of a board gaming type thing. If I was around more board gaming forums and stuff, I might hear more about it. Pomsy says, always loved to talk. What are you two talking about? William Jones, good evening, mate. He said, watch your playthrough of Chain of Command by Two Fat Lardies when you have some spare time. That might pique your interest in historicals. Very intense skirmish system with lots of randomness. I think it's more, mate, we didn't really kind of study sort of like World War II and historical stuff in history when I was a kid. Like we learned about the Romans, we learned about Hadrian's Wall because it's very close to where I live. We learned about like the Vikings because obviously there was a big Viking kind of a lot of Vikings from the Nordic regions coming across to the northeast of England. Like a lot of our area here is basically kind of based on Viking kind of influence. So we learned about that kind of stuff in Industrial Revolution in the UK and all those kind of things. We didn't really do like wars, World War II, World War One. We didn't do like kind of like Napoleonic Wars or Boer Wars or anything like that. So I think it's kind of lost on me. I don't really know much about that historical side of things that a lot of games are based upon. Maybe I don't even really watch war films, if I'm honest. Like I've obviously seen things like Saving Private Ryan, and I went to watch 1914 and really enjoyed it. But yeah, maybe I just need to do a bit more research on that kind of stuff. Lee Russell saying Marvel Champions is only 40 quid on BG Extras. The Marvel Minis game is quite pricey though. I think it was I thought it was a lot more than that in Travelling Man. Mate, it was the first time I'd actually like seen how much it was. Maybe it was like full list price. VJ says Lucy APS new Kit Bash Basilisk looks pretty cool. I do like the idea of kit bashing tanks, as the Citadel ones are pretty dinky. Yeah, he does a good job of that kind of stuff. Luke says it's more expensive than the other FFG LCG starter sets because it's the only one that does not require 2 sets if you want a deck build, not twice as much in the box. So do you have to build decks to play that game, or is it a bit more like, have you played the legendary games where it's like a deck builder as you play the game as opposed to deck building? Mike says I clicked the link before and it's always sent me to the UK one. Yeah, there's a UK Amazon link, mate. I think I've tried really hard to try and get one link that everybody can click on, but it just doesn't seem to want to do it. I had to set it up as like 3 different accounts. Vici says I did the between round animations for Agents of Sigmar Marvel Champions game. If you like them, reach out to me and I can do some for your channel. I haven't. Do you know what it is, mate? I haven't actually seen the between. I've watched some of their champion stuff, but I must admit I must have completely missed the animations, or I didn't watch it long enough to see one, mate, between rounds. William says it's not so much about the history as the predation, intense stuff. I will definitely check it out then, mate. Thank you. Luke says that's for Reichbusters. I really think they hurt themselves with yet another shitty rule book. Also, like these big mythic games, you need to make it easy to set up quicker, which I have done. It's one of the biggest issues I have with some of them. I mean, Super Fantasy Brawl obviously won't suffer from that, and I am massively looking forward to it. But these games that take a long time to set up, I find it hard. I find it hard to get opponents for games that take a long time to set up, take a long time to kind of teach the rules, or especially when the rule book isn't intuitive. I struggle to get Batman Gotham City Chronicles to the table for the same reason. I pretty much gave up on Joan of Arc for exactly the same reason. I didn't back Reichbusters because of that. When I saw all of the minis that they were doing for Hell, the last saga, I basically as soon as I saw the board layout, it was like It's going to be exactly the same thing. I backed out of the Solomon Kane Kickstarter for exactly the same reason. Setup time, the amount of stuff, far too much basically for me as a casual player, unfortunately. Marcus says, in the States we learn general history in grade school, American state history in middle school, and world history in high school. Yeah, I mean, I didn't take history as an exam. I didn't take it as... In the UK, we get to take options. When we hit 13, we get to choose the lessons that we want to take exams in, and I didn't choose history. So I basically didn't kind of go on and do like the latter part of history lessons, really. Maybe that's part of the reason why not. Lee saying, regarding Marvel Champions, everything you buy, you get a starter deck, but you can deck build before the game. See, that's kind of enough to put me off that, to be fair, mate. Oak and Iron, Blood and Plunder is historicals, and I bet you'd love it. Do you know what? You know what kind of puts me off some of those games is the fact is I don't have anything for them. I don't have the terrain. I don't have any... I don't have anything to play those games. I've got some sci-fi terrain now, thanks to some kind of thanks to some 40k stuff and some amazing stuff that Christian sent me. I've got fantasy stuff. Again, Christian sent me some trees, and I've got the Warcry stuff and some things I bought for Vanguard. I've got the battle system stuff now. It tends to be the games where I'd be starting completely from scratch with a whole new set of terrain that I kind of just go, maybe I'll get to it one day, I think. Luke saying you can use pre-built decks and they come pre-made, but you can't alter them. Oh, if they come pre-made as well, maybe that's not so bad then. Brennick says there are some good historical-like games out there, like Test of Honor, Mortal Gods, and Saga. 1 foot in history, but fun games and quick to play. The games I should really check out, but again, it's more about who I've got as opponents as well. Like it would be great to get something like Bushido or something, but I just don't have the opponents to play those kind of games. Although, to be fair, the guy that I've bought all of my God tier stuff, I've been having a real good chat with him tonight when he dropped it off, and he's planning to come over and play a game soon, and I think he plays like 10 times more games than I play. So we're talking about having a game of Batman miniatures game. We're going to have a try of Moonstone, a few different bits and pieces, games that I've wanted to try but just don't have access to. So yeah, that'll help me. I want to play more games anyway. It'll give me more information to talk to you lot about the games I don't really know about. And he likes to play a lot of different games as well. So, yes, who knows? Very soon we might be seeing more different bits and pieces. Pomsey's saying the problem with historical games is you can't buy them in a starter box. You can with some, mate. Like the what were they called? The Band of Brothers set for Bolt Action. You can get in a starter box. I'm sure other games. I think there's a Mortal Gods starter set. I think. Peter says, all I know about World War II is my granddad kept his whiskey in the air raid shelter in a tin potty. Dave Moffat says, I'm getting some Warlord... Oh, sorry, Brennick there, just answering some of the stuff I was just talking about there as well. Thank you, David. Thank you, Brennick, rather. David says, I'm getting some Warlords, Hail Caesar, Celtic Warriors, but built right now. Not for historical gaming, though. I'm going to use them in Oathmark. VG says, Americans learn world history, you never know. Marcus says, in the States, writing, history, science and math are required in all 12 grades. Science is in the UK. English literature and English language and maths. But history, geography, art, those kind of things are all options. Jigabachi says, looking forward to the new Aliens game by Gale Force 9. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what comes of that one. Hethwell saying, Oak and Iron starter set will get you back on track, mate. Try it. I'll give it a look, mate. Thank you for the recommendation. Luke saying, historical keeps getting my attention. Saga is one I have my eye on. Gangs of Rome is another that looks interesting. Vijay says, yeah, I wouldn't mind playing a Japanese-based skirmish. Love Japan, the history and the culture. I had a little try of... Was it Test of Honor that I tried? I think it was Test of Honor. I had a demo game of that one quite some time ago and actually quite enjoyed it. And I would have picked up, randomly, I would have bought the starter set there in that day, but the shop didn't have any. And then I basically never ever went and got one. Lisa and Fair Play Marvel Champions is very good though. The pre-built decks that come in each pack are fine for casual play. We always use them at least once when we get them. If I can pick it up cheap enough then, mate, like you say, if it's cheap at that, was it BG games or something, or BG games, it might be worth picking up, especially if you play it solo as well, so it might be worth picking up actually. Red Rose Wargaming says, Alan bought a God Tier starter set and 5 war pans today for 60 quid after watching your video. Another game to play when you visit. Definitely. So I've now got the entire everything. I've got the neoprene mat and the rings and the smoked dice and the campaign cards. I've got all 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 war bands now. I've got 2 more on the way, which is the two that have been pre-ordered. I've gone in balls deep into this one now. I absolutely love the game. So yes, we will definitely have to have some games, Anna. Marcus says his dad's a history teacher. He had no option. That would explain a lot, mate. Lord Maiden says I have the Mortal Gods. What was that? I have the Mortal Gods 2-player set. It's 50 quid. Enough stuff for 2 war bands. Paul, good evening, Paul. How are you doing, mate? He says, if you're happy doing what you're doing, then don't do historicals for the sake of it. But it's definitely worth reframing what you consider historical. Not everything is Waterloo reconstruction. I agree, mate, and I think there is things like Gangs of Rome, things like Blood and Plunder. I don't necessarily think of instantly as historical gaming, and it's not a case of I wouldn't just try them because people saying you should try it, you like it kind of thing. Like my brother-in-law, like my regular gaming opponent normally, pre-lockdown I suppose, he's just bought some bolt action stuff that he's been painting as well. So I think we probably will just give it a try and stuff and roll some dice and see how it plays. And maybe that might inspire me to try other bits and pieces as well if I get into it. So who knows? I like to play lots of different games. I'll always play lots of different games. I've learned enough from things like Warcry that I basically thought I wasn't interested and then completely changed my mind. Like God Tier, that I wasn't interested and completely changed my mind. I've learned enough to never judge a book by its cover. It's the reason I want to go back and try 40k and kind of give 9th edition a go with Krabby there. The game is hugely popular. It can't be that bad. And the same goes with these historical games as well. Even the ones I don't necessarily consider historical. They're hugely popular, and I would even just like. It's a shame that there's not more conventions running. I would love to go and get demos of these kind of things. Getting demos of games is really hard at the moment, and I'm sure that's really sort of hitting a lot of gaming companies, especially the smaller ones. I'm sure that's kind of hitting them where it hurts as well. Luke said, I'm looking forward to Alien Game, but I wish Gale Force 9 would talk more about it and start showing it off more. I'll be honest, mate, I've pretty much heard nothing about it. Pre-order opened and I could barely see what you got in the box. Mark said, I specialise in Norse, Irish, Japanese, Egyptian and Arabian history. Nice, mate. Pomsey said, check out his latest zine for an introduction to historical wargaming. Sorry for the plug. Never be sorry about a plug, mate. You're all right. Brennick says, Saga is good. The core rules are standard across all factions, but the battle boards add flavour for each force. I remember there was a club that wasn't too far from me, seemed to get like massively into Saga quite some time ago. Peter Cummins says, the biggest thing is you really have to decide when going into historicals. There's historical themed games like, for example, Bolt Action and historical simulations that are way more complicated. Yeah, the simulation stuff is, I know that's definitely not for me. I think what we've been talking about tonight with randomness and stuff like that, I know that's not the kind of game that I'll be interested in. More the action stuff, more the Hollywood versions, I think, is essentially what I will have more fun with. VG saying, I'd watch a few more Robin's Marvel Champions game before picking it up. Give me a chance to see the animations. I will do, mate, actually. David says, my friend is always trying to entice me into Saga. He gave me the Scots-Irish dice. Brennick says, I wasn't much of a fan of the first edition of Saga. Played lots of it, but terribly unbalanced. Second edition is a breath of fresh air. Nice one. Malt Berracloth, good evening, mate. How you doing? He says, sorry for being silent. Been playing Arkham Horror and really need to concentrate. Super Fantasy Brawl just around the corner. Looking forward to it now. Yeah, so the latest update we got is that it looks like it's basically arrived at the European hub. It needs to get kind of checked out. It needs to go through customs. So hopefully in the next month or so, we should start seeing some of the European copies arriving. I backed for the Feldherr case as well, so I'm looking forward to getting that coming. Marcus says, before COVID at work, my boss was going to set up 15mm Sparta versus Persia. That would be nice to see, actually. Luke says, my mate and I got a Wild West game back at the table, developed the rules further. Such a fun process to go through, and great when you introduce people. They have great ideas to add in. Yeah, I mean, that's part of playtesting and stuff, isn't it? It's really nice to get it in front of people. Steve said, I painted a Battle of Waterloo a couple of times, and it's been great. Both done it over a day with the club mates. I thought you meant you'd painted the whole army over a day there. I was going to say I'm not surprised, but yeah, playing a full battle. Napoleon won both times. Tim Kelly says, I think you'd really like Conflict 47. I probably would, mate. To be fair, I think I probably would, but I think I'd probably try bolt action first and then maybe move on to Conflict. Am I right in thinking that Conflict 47 is still on like an older? Has it been updated to version 2 of bolt action, or is it still based around version 1? David says, I'm very interested in Team Yankee World War III games, and I'm old enough to not consider it historical. World War III is definitely not historical, mate, that's for sure. Bombsy saying I've got Tanks the Modern Age, but it's in the pile of shame. Tanks is a good little game, mate. It's nice and cheap as well. Brennick says he's Club and Air puts on big games every year. We've refought Waterloo, the invasion of Crete in recent years. For Crete, we use the church hall with the tables arranged in the shape of the whole island. I love the lengths sometimes people go to for those really big games. Luke saying, yeah, Conflict 47 looks great. I love Weird World War, hence enjoying Rightbusters. I almost backed Rightbusters, mate, purely just for the minis, because I do like the minis, I'll be honest. Steve saying, yeah, that was played. VJ saying, Conflict 47 definitely on a list to play. David says, Tanks Modern Age is a quick one to get you going. Paul says, a couple of years ago, I got into Dead Man's Hand by Great Escape Games. The Wild West is still technically historical, but you get a cinematic movie feel when playing. Yeah, and I think Wild West does scratch my kind of itch, really. I mean, I love Wild West Exodus. Fantastic minis, based on some kind of weird alternative historical setting, as if things went down a very slim, different path, a little bit kind of like the multiverse from DC and stuff. But yeah, it definitely scratches it a bit. Dust 1947 is the closest I've come to historical. I've never played Dust, but I heard good things about it. Lee saying, right guys, been a fun street night. See you all soon. Thank you, Lee. Take care, mate, and I will see you after. VJ saying, probably play it on Tabletop Simulator first, though. That's my thing for testing games. And VJ saying, yeah, about K47. Excuse me, folks, I have a drink. My throat's really dry and I forgot I had a drink there. Bonzi saying that he wants to paint Pirates of the Dead Sea and 40k recruit box first. That's the way to do it, mate. Just stick to what you've got. Just literally paint what you've got. Set yourself even if you set yourself a little target. If I'm going to paint 2 of these models before I buy anything else, or I'm going to paint 1 warband before I buy anything else. If you set yourself a little target, you'd be surprised how much you motivate yourself to get things done. Brennick says, what a tanker from Two Fat Lorries, the best tank battle game I've played. You roll 6 dice and each result allows a different action. Move, shoot, reload, etc. I think I've seen the Two Fat Lorries doing a demo of that on YouTube. They seem like really nice guys, to be fair. Maybe it's the kind of thing I would like to try out at a convention or something. Steve saying, just getting back into some 6mm historical games at the moment. Ancients, English Civil War and American Civil War. Peter says, I love playing. Nice, by the way. The small scale stuff has never really never really interested me. But I think if I saw it all laid out, it might change my mind. Peter says, I love playing historical games that's simplified to play fast. We used to do simulations, but our banter always made we couldn't finish in the evening, so now we banter and sometimes throw a dice. Yeah, I mean, that's it. If you're having fun, that's all that counts, really, isn't it? The simulation stuff is sometimes a little bit too ingrained, sort of too, not clunky is not the word I'm looking for, a bit too granular, I think, for what I'm looking for. Spider-Law says, never been much of historical games. I was interested in Warlords, Battleship game, Victory at Sea, but they ruined the models with ugly bases. Yeah, I've got Cruel Seas, and I must admit it's never made it out of the box, to be fair. I bought it myself, and I thought it was something I was really interested in. I think the rule book was a bit of a mess. There was so many mistakes in it from day one. Everything is still in the box, still on sprues. I've not even unboxed it, really. Yoakum saying, good night, folks. Great chat as always. Thanks, Yoakum, and I hope you're on a speedy recovery soon, mate. Mark saying there'll be some UK cons next year for us all to get together and try and play some games. Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. I was just chatting to somebody tonight and I was saying about how I meant to go to Adepticon this year and obviously I couldn't go. And I've kept the money to one side so I can go next year. So the money's tucked away. I kept the money from the flight that was cancelled. The money is there for me to go next year. And I must admit, I'm getting to the point now where I'm thinking, I honestly can't see it happening next year either. Like it'll be March time. I honestly can't even see that happening next year, which would be a huge shame. But yeah, I'm fingers crossed we start to get back and see some conventions, and we can actually start to meet up and stuff. Like a lot of us we can all attend the same event and meet up and grab a coffee or grab a beer or whatever and just sit and have a bit chatting. Nice to see some of you in all like kind of face to face in the flesh. VG saying, okay, Nurgle Blitzball team done. Nice one, mate. Brennick said, it's the dice mechanics that grab me in these historicals. The hand of dice dictating your actions is in Water Tanker or the strategies you can play in Saga. I'll need to do a bit more digging about Water Tanker. I like the idea of painting tanks, actually, if I'm honest. Marcus, does anyone know any good cyberpunk customizable models? Cyberpunk customizable model. I mean, obviously, Necromunda stuff, hugely customizable. I'm trying to think of anything else, to be fair. There was somebody in our Patreon group was talking about a cyberpunk game that's coming soon, I think. Barry says, Fallout seems to be getting closer and closer to becoming a historical game with every passing day. You're not wrong, mate. That and Pandemic, I think. As well says, I use transparent bases for Black Seas models, would do the same for World War II ships. I don't play those rules, but the models are great. Luke says Aircon is going to happen, or at least it's booked, as they got great terms to be able to cancel with no expense to them. Yeah, I think the problem is, mate, it's not a case of the people not wanting to do these things. It's more a case of like, will the world let these things happen? Basically, it feels like we're going backwards, not forwards on this kind of stuff. Peter says I still play the old Axis and Allies War Sea game. Came boosters pre-painted. Simple and fun and fast fleet naval game. I'm looking forward to Mantic's announcement so I can talk to you more about it. Talking of naval games. Barry says I grew up playing historical games. I still have that bug. David says it's time for a BlackJack Legacy Water Tanker video. Who knows, mate? Maybe it might be in the future. Lord Maiden saying Gangs of the Undercity. That must be the game I was trying to think of, mate. It was you that was talking about Lord Maiden, I think. Promise says I just want to do the tanks good. Get all the mud and the weathering on there. Yeah, I haven't painted anything other than bits of terrain. I've not painted anything that's not like humans, if you like, or human sized. I've not painted any vehicles like in a long time. And I was getting the itch to paint some like big vehicles for 40k, but yeah, painting some tanks might not be a bad shout. David Tinney wants to know more about Water Tanker 2. Brennick says Cobblestone Castings do some cracking near future and cyberpunk minis, but metal and not the most customizable. Luke saying Hassle Free do some good ones. Corvus Belly Infinity could work. Yeah, 100%. Infinity could definitely work. Steve saying Water Tanker, great starter game for starters into historical games as you can play with just one tank each. That's interesting. And I assume, is there a specific scale that you're meant to use, or can you use any kind of scale of tanks? Like if I bought tanks for, let's just say, bolt action, would you use that scale, or is it more Flames of War size, or is there a scale to it? Vijay saying, yeah, I heard the Ronin numbers ain't looking good. Yeah, I don't really want to get into it tonight, mate, but I'll happily chat to you in private about it. I don't really want to talk about it on the stream, but it's kind of frustrating if I'm perfectly honest. Mark saying, Luke saying, Luke's painting 15mm tanks. Spilo says, tanks, yes, infantry, meh, too small. That's kind of where my head's at, mate. Mark saying, Firestorm Games is in trouble as they leaked the name of the new Mantic Kings of War. Are they in trouble about that? We were chatting about it in the Patreon today. I didn't realise they've obviously put the pre-orders up too early, haven't they? VG saying, fingers crossed for you all. I'm hoping we can get clubs over here open before the end of the year. I need to eat. I'm surprised your clubs are not open again, you mate. I think our pubs and stuff have been like reopened, and they're just limiting numbers. I think that's the thing. Marcus says my friends have been joking in the US. It's on its way to Demolition Man rather than Fallout. To be honest, it's part of the reason where I keep thinking that we won't see. Excuse me. why we won't see a Adepticon next year. I just don't see things getting better fast enough. Lucian just picked up more time on PC. Lovely game. Heather saying, water tanker can be easily adapted to 40k tanks. That's the beauty of miniature wargame rule sets. You're not trapped by the box and counters of a board game. I wasn't sure it was like a certain scale, mate. Brennick saying who plays it in 20 or 28 mil, saying I played it in 6. Pomsy saying the big conversation in historical right now is historical game dying? Sounds ridiculous to me. Of course it isn't. It's 2020 and we're still talking about it. I think there is an element, mate, of that as the age profile of players of historical games gets older and there are not more younger players coming through. I think that's what they're getting at. Like, it might still be popular, it might be still getting played, but if it's not attracting a newer audience, it will phase itself out, essentially, I think. And a lot of those games are played by older players, which can potentially be off-putting. It certainly was to me when I was younger. I saw World War II games being played with quite miserable old men, if I'm honest, and I'm going back probably about 10, 15 years ago. It was played by miserable old men who didn't really want to interact with us younger people, if you like. And unfortunately, that's kind of stuck with me, I think. I'm not tarring everybody with the same brush, by the way. That was the situation at my local club, I should add. Tim Kelly says, is there a civil war in Demolition Man? Was thinking more idiocracy. Richard Smith, hello mate. He said, I've pulled some 100 Years War 1980s Essex minis from my childhood, really enjoying the change from 40k and Warcry, using it to teach myself freehand. Heraldry is hard, mate. 100% it is. Vijay says, pubs are open with distancing rules. Nightclubs, unfortunately, are not. A bit hard to do the distancing thing on a dance floor. Yeah, no, you're right. Don't worry about the detour, mate. It's hard not to talk about it. It's massively important. Barry saying, rock on Tim Kelly. I think we need an inauguracy game. Richard Smith says, although rewatching The Walking Dead, so tempted by Mantic at the moment. I love The Walking Dead game. I'll always say how good that is. Peter said, I've just seen that as well, and historical is not dying. The big games are, but skirmishes on the rise. Look at Sharp Practice, for example. About Restaurant Wars. Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were talking about Restaurant. Taco Bell was the last one that was left. That's right. Brennick says, the club I attend are all older gents. I'm one of the youngest at 41. They all play historicals almost exclusively. Fantasy and sci-fi are rare. Barry said, I'm a miserable old man and I play World War II games. Do you know what it is? It's less about the age profile, if I'm honest. I never felt that they were very welcoming as a group of gamers. Like, the 40k players, for example, were quite happy to have more people to come and play their games. These older guys that were at this particular club, I got the impression the last thing they wanted was somebody who didn't know anything coming in and them having to teach them the rules. Like, I only get 1 day a week away from my wife, and I come here to play the game, not to teach youngins how to play. That was kind of my impression of them back then. Pomsy saying a train set's dying. They've been around since 1903. People always look at these hobbies. I think the difference is, mate, is miniature gaming is in a growth phase at the moment, but people are choosing different types of games, skirmish games, games with less models included, games which take less time to play, that play on a smaller play surface. I think the massive big 8-foot by 4-foot games of Napoleonic Wars and stuff are probably dying out. Hethwell says, Lawley's approach, more game and fun that represents the historical periods and less aloof simulations with idiots. I think they're on Napoleon. I agree, mate. I think that's exactly what's needed. And I think those games are in ascendancy. They're not dying out. I think it's traditional historical games, as in what you think of when you think of those huge big tables of models. I think that's probably what's dying out. Derek Hodge says, not all of us old men who play World War II are miserable. Yeah, that's what I mean. I wasn't tarring everybody with the same brush. I am now an old man as well, to be fair. And I can still be miserable, and I don't play World War II games. Marcus says, it seems to be, at least in my city, since we have an army base here, a lot of soldiers getting into historical gaming. I can see that. I think there'll be pockets of that dotted about. Adam's saying, is The Walking Dead the perfect gateway game? I still think it is, mate. I mean, it's getting a bit long in the tooth now, and there's probably some other opportunities and stuff. But a lot of the stuff that come out now just don't come with everything you need. Walking Dead always came with everything you need in the box, and still does, to be fair. Marcus says, I see people like historical gaming that like history more than the gaming sometimes. Yeah, I think that might also be the case, mate. Brennick saying the air guys always have been happy to include players. To be honest, mate, I like I say, I'm not tarring everybody with the same brush. It was the experience of the club I went to. I might have just went to a bunch of miserable old farts, if I'm honest. Ryan says, it's all cyclical. We will see a resurgence soon when the need to have bigger battles with faster mechanics. I'm not so sure, mate. I think especially with the current situation we're in now, where more people are retreating to play games at home and stuff, and play games in the garage and spare rooms and things, I think like table size is becoming a really important factor, and more companies are realising this and scaling games down. People tend to have disposable income but less time to play and paint, and I think that's why we're seeing certain games in ascendancy. It's one of the reasons why Warhammer and 40k is kind of really pushing those smaller games again now. Mark saying, hang on, you can't be old, man, because that makes me old too. And Palmsy saying they need to be a bit more zip-bang market and Twitch. That, I think there's a lot in that as well, mate. The companies that produce those games, and I include Warlord in that as well, tend not to be the best when it comes to embracing the digital side of marketing and stuff as well. I think Two Fat Lardies do a good job of it. I think at least they've got their head around it, and kind of they're on Twitter and they make YouTube videos and stuff. But a lot of the others basically just like Warlord do very little online with bolt action. They do very little online with any of their games, if I'm perfectly honest. They could really do with like a more prominent face, I think, on kind of on social media and stuff. Like they send out their newsletters and stuff, and they do the odd video. But yeah, they could. I mean, they're not a tiny company. They're almost the GW of historical games, really. That kind of entry point, really. So I'm surprised we don't see more from them. Brennick saying, the thing about historicals, you're not restricted to a single manufacturer for your models. You can shop around as many cover the same periods. Good point. Palmsy saying, I know simplify my comments, but I think it won't go anywhere. Same way as jigsaws or airfix. I don't think historicals will disappear, mate. I think it just needs to change. It will change and adapt in the same way as fantasy games have changed. Like they're not games now are not like old Warhammer Fantasy. They've changed. Hethwell says, question is more, why are clubs dying a lot in some countries? Answer, because players. I think it's... I don't know, if I'm perfectly honest. I think sometimes my experience is clubs can end up becoming toxic on their own, like because of the people that go there. There are some people who don't treat a club like a place for people to come together and play. They treat it as like their own little personal like domain where like I'm in charge here. Like I run this club. Like this is my club. I'm the committee here. I decide what goes on. I decide what games get played. And I think, unfortunately, that can be what gets a lot of clubs to close, because people just don't want to go and play there anymore. Steve saying 6 mil big battles on 4x4 tables with fast-paced rules seem pretty popular. Backers have been struggling to keep up with sales over lockdown. That's good, mate. It's good to hear. Tony saying, according to my boys, I was around to see the beginning of the dinosaurs. Yeah, I'm sure my kids think I was born in black and white, mate. Richard Smith says, different in America with COVID, where they rely on shops more for games. Different culture over here, but our local club has the same reputation for clicky old guard playing historicals. Yeah, it's been my experience from a couple of clubs I've been to. Richard says, a new shop just opened up pushing 40k, Magic the Gathering and Star Wars. They're flying, especially considering they opened during a pandemic. That's good to see, mate. It's good to see businesses doing well. Derek says, historical figures are usually considered cheaper than fantasy. I guess that's because... maybe and I don't mean this derogatory, but I don't seem to see the same quality in historical gaming as I see in maybe fantasy or sci-fi. Is that because it's a different market? Like, I'm not saying that they're bad sculpts, but I just don't see... Like, Wild West Exodus models are absolutely beautiful. Warhammer sort of 40k stuff and Necromunda stuff, there's some beautiful sculpts there. The stuff I tend to see, like especially if I look at things like Warlord and stuff, whilst they're nice, they're not on the same level, like quality-wise. Mark is saying, if I could find a good historical naval game with World War II submarine battles, it would rocket down that rabbit hole. Peter says, Warlord Games is old school face-to-face. When I went to pick up an order on the Crisis Show, I was asked by Mr. Stallard himself if I found everything. While I like it, they need to be more all-round. Yeah, I think, like, there's some young people work there. Like I really like that the young guy, Charlie. He's from the Northeast. I don't think he lives up here, but he's from the Northeast. I really like him when he's been on like the Goblin Gaming videos and stuff like that. I think they do. I think he's a sales guy actually. So I know they do have some kind of people in there who are capable of doing that kind of stuff. But I just wish we saw. I wish we saw more of them. Ryan says it's going to be hard to grow clubs with COVID. 100%, mate. Yeah. Pomsy saying you would want to welcome anyone to your club. Weird. No, do you know what it is, mate? Some people are quite cliquey, and it's like what they don't want. And I found this when I've been to a club. They don't want new people coming in with fresh ideas or playing games that they don't play. To take, they see it as you stealing away their opponents from the game that they play. So, for example, if in this particular instance there was a guy that basically ran the club, he was the chairman or whatever he was, or secretary or whatever they call it, and he played 40k, and he loved having his kind of little band of people that played 40k. And when I started playing Malifaux there, some of those 40k players picked up Malifaux warbands and came and played Malifaux with me, and he wasn't best pleased that I had taken away some of his players. For all those guys who were still coming to the club and they were still paying to attend the club, he wasn't happy that basically somebody new would come in and taken away his players. That was how he saw it. Peter saying historicals need to be cheaper. Everybody can make the same stuff. There's no protected IP. Yeah, maybe that's why we don't see that kind of stuff. Tony saying the quality in historical minis tends to be 54mm plus. Yeah, I've seen some fantastic like busts and stuff like that, mate. Mike G says, just got some Warhammer Sepulchral Guard of Amazon off your link. Hope it works. I'll check it out, mate, actually, and I'll be able to tell. Couldn't find them on other sites. They may be discontinued. I think they are discontinued, mate, because they were from season 1, I think. Paul says, it's a myth. Historicals are dying. They aren't being played in hobby stores, but dying. Nope. Go to Salute and look at how many of the display games and tables are historical. I agree, mate, but Salute was always kind of built up around historical gaming, and it is an event where people come and put on kind of display games and stuff. But I wonder how much those people who have these huge big armies and stuff, I wonder how much they're buying these days. I don't know. I'm genuinely interested to find that kind of stuff out. Spider-Lord says, I think I'm going to chuck Warlord my CV. I'm not far away. Do it, mate. Do it. Brennick says, my club can't restart as the majority of members are deep in the at-risk category. Haven't played anything since February. That's a real shame, mate, isn't it? Derek's saying, top quality historical miniatures are every bit as good as fantasy. Go look at Perry minis if you don't believe me. I do know some of the Perry stuff. Maybe it's just because they're not fantastical, if you like. Maybe like all of the extra stuff, they are realistic and they are accurate. Maybe there's just not as much embellishment on them that makes me think of them being of a higher quality, if you like. Kaylee Anderson, good. Hello, Kaylee. She says there's no room for imagination in historical minis. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at. Maybe that's why I don't see them as like. There's nothing over the top about them, is that they are just realistic, if you like. Welcome to the chat, by the way. Mike G said, I even felt the click mentality in other Discord groups. Ask a question or try to contribute to the conversation and you're just ignored. Yeah, it can be tough breaking into that kind of stuff. Ian says the UK club dynamic versus store-based US communities is interesting. Wish we had some clubs here independent of stores. The problem is, mate, clubs independent of stores in the UK means that stores struggle to get people in their doors and playing unless they're a big enough club to kind of like support a good number, a big enough shop to support a good number of people. So we don't have a lot of like local stores, unfortunately, because of that. Because people are not loyal to a particular store because they tend not to play there very much. So they just buy the cheapest online because they play at like a church hall or a community centre. Jacob says, really enjoying this chat. Keep it rolling. I think I'm running out of steam, mate, if I'm honest. Peter Koeman says, I'll be honest and tell you I'm one of those big army guys. I can't tell you I have probably between 1,000 and 2,000 in Napoleonics in just a year or three. And that's in euros. I wonder if you're the minority though, or if you're just common of like, is it common that everybody else spends that kind of money? I honestly don't know, and I'm not saying like what's right or wrong. Like it's an area of the hobby that I honestly don't know a lot about, and I don't have any friends or contacts who are into that really to know whether you're a bit of an anomaly, and that you spend more than the average, or are you the typical kind of shopper, if you like? Peter saying there 4 armies for bolt action as well, a couple of 1,000 10mm models. Wow. Steve says, we're pretty lucky at the club. We have people that play all types of games. Got a couple of 70-year-olds that play 40k. Wow, that's unusual. Marcus says, depends if newer, better looking models come out for historical was when they buy more. Since just like any war game, and once you have what you need, you don't buy more. That's kind of what I mean. It's not like how different. Like, so, for example, if you play Warhammer, let's say you play Warhammer 40k, and for Games Workshop release a new faction, a new army for 40k. That's a whole like load of new models that people might buy into. But with historical gaming, it's not like, oh, we've discovered this extra country that wasn't really taking part, but we've made this whole new range of minis, so you've got something new. At what point are they just remaking the same stuff all of the time and fighting amongst themselves? Because that's what I find in fantasy and sci-fi gaming. Each system has its model release kind of, it's what's the word I'm looking for? Its model range. And people will buy, I'll buy these models for 40k, I'll buy these models for Warhammer Fantasy, Age of Sigmar, I'll buy these for Necromunda. When it comes to historical, like you're saying, one of the positives is you can buy your minis from wherever you want. But then I do wonder how much all of these companies are basically just biting bits off each other a little bit. Paul said, I don't know much about anyone other than me is buying. However, look at how many companies are currently producing new miniatures and new rules. There's loads. Like I say, mate, it's not an area I know a lot about. I probably don't even know half of the rule sets that's out there when it comes to historical stuff. Maybe it's something I kind of need to do a bit of research in. William says, in the past 3 months, I've bought about 800, 900 North Koreans and about 18 Orcs and Elves. Yeah, you must be definitely the more historical side then. Luke said, I think although Salute is loads of historicals, I would say look at the age of the people that are putting on those games. I don't think it will go away though, and Andy is right. It will evolve. Yeah, I think it needs to. I think it will evolve, but you're right. I mean, there's not a table of like 25-year-olds playing those games. And to be fair, if you look at the average age of the shopper at Salute now, I mean, I made that video a couple of years ago about why I'm not going back to Salute, and other than wanting to go to meet up with people, there ain't a lot for me to come back to there. Like, it's nice to see those big tables and those big battles and stuff, but I can't play them. Like, it's not a demo. I can't join in. Like, so it's one of those things where I walk past and go, oh, that's nice. And that's kind of it, really. Bennett saying we don't have a friendly local gaming store with tables within 60 miles maybe, so club is the only option outside of GW. Mark is saying the game store I hang out does not charge us to use the tables to the game, so hearing people pay to play is weird. Yeah, we tend to pay to play even in stores in the UK as well, so it's not like it's not unheard of, if you like, because to be fair, these stores have their overheads basically, and not everybody will be buying stuff when they turn up. And then if you go to like a local club that's in a church hall or something, you have to hire the place, so everybody pays like a small amount to play there. It might only be like £3 or £4 or something like that, but it's like there is a fee normally included. Ian says, so do you know why gaming companies don't produce more YouTube content? I expect if you put in the money to make the game, you could put in the money to have a battle report at 10. I think a lot of it is down to resources, mate. If you've got, like, it's not easy to make YouTube content on a regular basis. Like, if you were making one video a week, it'll take you 2 or 3 days to do like a battle report and stuff. That is time that you have taken somebody out of another job. And other than Games Workshop, who run like Warhammer community, so that when they run Warhammer community on Twitch and stuff like that, they've got people who are in it. That is their job, that they are employed to do that. I think a lot of people, they rely upon the community to do it. And unfortunately, if your game's not that big, few people will make content for it. And even fewer of those people are producing it at a high enough quality that you want to be kind of recommending it to other people, if you like. So it's quite hard, really, I think. I think it's purely just down to resources. Most of these companies aren't that big. And I think that is the bulk of it, really. IAMSIM would help to teach the game and spread the word. I agree, mate. I think anytime a new game comes out, the least they should do is do a how-to-play like video for it. Even if you don't do any more content, every single game that comes out from a company should have a this is how you play the game. Because that would spread the word a lot faster. Definitely. 20 said don't mind historicals and would like to see more paint and shared. May not be my thing, but I love the shared experience. I love seeing them painted, mine. I must admit, there's something about like a big painted historical army. Like, even if it's not my taste of, like, I don't want to play the particular game or whatever, like there's still like an aesthetic beauty in it. Steve saying, yeah, historicals, there's hundreds of different rules to choose from. I think that's maybe where it becomes a bit confusing, mate. Mark saying also most historical players to leave the game, they change their armies, which means the new owner does not need to buy more as well. Richard Smith saying there are still new armies coming out for Napoleonics, heaps of British, but they must be like, they're just resculpts, aren't they? That somebody else already makes. They're trying to make better quality or whatever. Steve, as I said before, people were saying 30 years ago historicals is dying and it's still here. It depends what scene you're in. It's definitely about what scene you're in, mate. However, would you not agree that the average age of a historical gamer is increasing? Because, like, I don't think people suddenly get to like 50 and 60 and go, right, well, I've had enough of 40k now, I think I'll start playing historicals. I just think the historical gamers are getting older. Do you know what I mean? Hethwell says, independent club relies on fees from associates usually, but if space is good, it's worth it. Luke saying, bloody hell, the earbud just came off my ear and I briefly thought it was stuck. My wife would never let me live it down if I woke up to get it out. Richard saying, HYW and War of the Roses. I don't know what HYW is. The same, I think. Swiss mercenaries, etc. Bit of seldom trodden ground. Plenty of good people in the hobby. Lots of high-level stuff too. We need basic stuff. Yeah, we need a mix of all sorts of stuff, mate. Definitely. Brennick saying club fees generally cover rent of the room and terrain for everyone to use. Usually, my local club basically, people either brought their own terrain or there was a little bit of club terrain, but generally it was just the hire of the room. Basically, that was what it was. Ryan Jackson says, "Night all, miss you already." Good night, mate. Yeah, 100 Years War. Thank you, Peter Kuhlman. Right, folks, I've gone over much more than I thought I was going to tonight. So I'm going to call it a night there now because my voice is getting my throat's getting sore all this talking without stop. So yeah, we'll call it a night. There'll be a video tomorrow, which is the clip from tonight. Wednesday we'll be doing a hobby hangout and painting. I've got another couple of videos planned and in the mix for the rest of the week. So I did 5 videos last week. I'm planning to do 5 videos this week as well. Please do check them out. If you haven't checked out last week's videos, there was a review of the Battle Systems Fantasy Village terrain. That's the card stock terrain, basically, that push fits together. Please do check that out if that's something you're interested in. Perfect for games like Kings of War Vanguard, maybe even Burrs and Badgers, Malifaux, any of that kind of stuff. Perfect stuff for that. And I also did a review, which I'm kind of proud of, actually. It was a video that I put a lot of time and effort into. It took me about 2 or 3 days to do. Lots of editing, lots of kind of different camera shots and B-roll stuff. And that was the one for God Tier as well. So the review for that. So even if it's a game you're not interested in, I really would appreciate you just checking it out and just kind of Let me know if you think the quality is going in the right direction. Has there been an improvement? Do you think it's going backwards? Is it the kind of stuff you want to see? Even if it's not a game you're interested in, am I giving you the right level of information to decide on whether a game's for you or not? All those kind of things just help me craft stuff for the future. So, thank you very much, folks, and I will see you on Wednesday's Hobby Hangout. Thanks. Thanks for watching my video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. And if you did, why not consider clicking on the suggested video below to see more of the work that I've done. If you'd like to support the long-term sustainability of this channel, why not consider checking out my Patreon, where you can pledge and support from as little as $2 a month. And there is lots of different tiers and bonuses, which will give you access to a private Discord server. It will give you free t-shirts, free mugs, a podcast every month, and a number of other things, including getting your name at the end of every video, like these awesome folks who already support me now.